let's get to it.
Yeah, perfect. So thanks for taking the time, especially with the major time difference that we have, to come on the show.
Well, I should be thanking you because this is morning for me. Actually, it's night for you. So you made the time. Thank you.
No problem. Where are you in India, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm based in the western state of Gujarat in a city called Ahmedabad. That's the manufacturing hub, my state. So there are
So,
companies that do cotton manufacturing. All kinds of manufacturing stuff happens here.
sorry, did you say Gujarat?
Yes, that's the state. And then if you see the right side, there's one called Ahmedabad. That's where I am.
But I'm trying to find it here.
Just a little bit on the right.
Oh,
Up.
this right here.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
there it is. Yes.
Oh, wow. That reminds me of Moscow. It kind of has the same layout with how it's spiraling out. Interesting.
Hold on, there's some background noise. I'm at a
That's
Starbucks actually. Let me just turn on noise suppression.
sure. That's okay. I use audio filters to edit in the After Effects, so it'll be able to edit out some of the noise, no problem.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah, so
interesting.
that's the city where I'm in. Um, see the river right there? That's a tourist spot actually. Search riverfront.
Oh wow.
Just in the search bar, type in riverfront. You'll see.
It goes right through it. Interesting.
Yep.
Very cool. Um so I happened upon your profile. Actually, I forget at this point how exactly.
Yep.
But I saw that you were in cybersecurity, and even from what little I know about that, I mean, how is it that you can get any sleep these days working in cybersecurity? That must be like, I mean, I'm not saying like total nightmare all the time, but there must be like a lot of anxiety in that whole space, right? About like the capabilities of tech nowadays, especially.
It pretty much is. So there's a couple of things. Now I've always worked in consulting roles, which means I worked at consulting firms.
Mm-hmm.
So we help clients, but the teams that are internal, meaning the organizations that are there, who have their internal security teams, they are the ones who have real nightmares, right? Because we are consultants. We do have SLAs, like service level agreements, on how quick we can respond to an incident. But
Mm-hmm.
still, their internal team is the one that really has sleepless nights. When a vulnerability comes out, and let's say the company has 500 firewalls, and then some zero-day vulnerability comes out, and 400 of them are affected. Now they are going to have sleepless nights until they find a patch and patch every single one of them. So it really is these days. And any cybersecurity person with worth their salt has to spend at least 1 hour every day reading, like just reading all these different news sites and catching up on Telegram groups, and reading threat intel and bug bounty reports and whatnot. Because the field is evolving so fast, yes, you need to catch up, especially if you are in a consulting role. Because if you are an internal security team securing an organization, you just have to look at your own infrastructure. Let's say you have Active Directory, or you have let's say you have Linux systems, then you can just follow the security related news regarding Linux. But as a consulting company, you have a bunch of clients, all of them have different infrastructure, so now you have to stay up to date with all of those. So
Huh.
it does get a bit hectic. I mean, the cybersecurity industry is known to have like high stress levels and a lot of burnout.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about like the day to day of working your job. I just meant like as a whole, like just as an idea. I don't remember which podcast it was I was listening to, but it was talking to the cybersecurity expert that was just they rank down like all the different ways that all these systems of infrastructure are just vulnerable to attack from foreign agents. Um, but I hadn't even considered like just the day to day working for a company, because as you said, yeah, it's just a constant stream of information. You got to root through it all and hope to find some kind of a fix for it. And especially, I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like a lot of these companies that have these vulnerabilities, they don't exactly like immediately hire like a like cybersecurity expert to work on their behalf. I feel like it's something that comes up as a result of a leak or some of an issue, like they're just kind of responding instead of being proactive.
Yep, that's pretty much how it is. I mean, especially smaller and medium-sized companies, now larger companies. So there are regulatory bodies, right? So, for example, if in India you are an insurance company, there's an insurance regulatory board.
Mhm.
So if you are a investment company, there's like in USA, there's SEC. We have SEBI, SEBI, RBI. There's all kinds of regulatory bodies in your industry that require certain guidelines to be followed.
Mhm.
One of which is the cybersecurity guideline. So that requires them to maybe get security audits done, have patch management in place, or maybe have network security. But that is just a checklist. And once they have that checklist, I mean, you can get the audit done and have people fooled by just simple audit done. But to get actual security in place, you need decision makers, the leadership, the executives who understand the risks, they understand the impact, like the business impact, not just that they have a vulnerability, but what can the vulnerability turn into in terms of numbers. So that's what happens. If they are able to understand that, they will invest heavily in security and they are very conscious. But if not, it is a headache to explain to them. Because if you go from a consulting perspective, Jason, they just think, hey, you're just making money. That's why you want to sell us your services. Right? We've seen even internal like CISOs. CISOs is like a chief information security officer at the top levels, like a C-level person who is in charge of security.
Mhm.
Even they have trouble explaining it to the board, a committee or a board, whatever the leadership is, how the security risks turn into business impact. So that is definitely a challenge, and most of the clients that come to us are coming either because they already have faced some kind of incident, and now they want to let's say they have a ransomware in place and they are infected by a ransomware, and now they want to get rid of it, and then they want to put security in place, or they have a client. Now what happens is all these software as a service companies, SaaS companies, when they try to land bigger B2B clients, they have something called vendor due diligence in place, which
Mhm.
means they have a list of things that you need to comply to unless they won't buy your product. And one of those will be something related to security. Like you need to have ISO 27001, that's an industry standard. It has all kinds of security controls. If you
Mhm.
comply to that, you have to make sure you have all those security controls in place. So now if you are a SaaS company and you go to a client and they say, hey, we love your product, but the only way we are going to give you business is if you comply to these five security checks. So now they come running to us, and then what they come to us requires like 8 months of implementation, and then 2 months of audits, and then 1 month to get the certification. And they want it done like tomorrow because they want to land the big client. So
Mhm.
those are the two primary ways people come to us. The third one is very rare, is where they are being proactive with their security and nothing has happened yet, but they want to just stay ahead of the bad guys. That's very rare. Usually it's either they faced an incident or a data leak, or else a client or a regulatory body requires them to, which is why they now have to comply to these things.
I see. Okay. And in terms of like security vulnerabilities, is it um in regards to the threats, is it like what is it that you typically see in your field? Is it actually like foreign state actors? Is it like black hat hackers that are just trying to make a buck with ransomware? Like what are some of the threats that you actually see?
So the majority ones that we see are nation state, like country sponsored attacks, like through APT groups and all. They happen with either larger companies or companies that are dealing in, let's say, aerospace or defense sector.
Mhm.
If they are building defense tech, there's a high chance that another country might try to steal the secrets. That's one. But the standard ones that we see are, so when it comes to small and medium sized companies, what you see is, let's say, let's think of let's think as a hacker. You find a vulnerability. So what you do is you go on something called Shodan. Shodan.io is an online, a tool that you can use to scan. Like you can open it up. It's Shodan.io, and you can find. Let's say you want to search companies that are using Oracle. You put in those parameters. No, Shodan is Shodan. Yeah, so you find companies with those specific infrastructure, Mr. Blocker.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you can find companies with that specific infrastructure. So most of the attacks that we see for small and medium-sized companies is where they happen to have the same infrastructure that a hacker is trying to hack into.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they do a targeted attack. They rather go with the vulnerability they can find. Now, let's say WordPress has a new vulnerability, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and the WordPress version is whatever, let's say 15. So you go and find every single website that is using WordPress 15, and then you attack it and see what you land with. That's how most of these attacks go. Now, in terms of larger organizations, then you start having those, bug bounty people. Like they email the CISO saying, "Hey, I found this vulnerability. Now give me a bug bounty." Or you have, in some cases, ransomware. Or for a while, crypto miners were a big headache. Like we had this one company who was building software for the army,
Mm-hmm.
and one of their Google Cloud instances was affected by crypto miner. And every time they try to spin it up, it just crashed because the crypto miner was so bad. So they had the server archived and like dismounted, like unmounted for 1.5 years before they came to us. Like they just left it. All like had all kinds of products that they were working on that they had to start from scratch. So crypto miners were also a headache. But the main way these attacks happen is you happen to have infrastructure that is recently has a vulnerability, or maybe you didn't patch something, you didn't update something, and a vulnerability came out, and a hacker happened to be sitting that night and trying to get into every single person he can get his hands on, every single company that has that kind of infrastructure. That's how most of these attacks happen.
I see. And when you say crypto miner, you mean like hacks where essentially somebody doesn't really notice that their system is slowing down, but a chunk of its resources are being used to mine crypto without the user's knowledge.
Yep, and the larger the server, obviously, the better it is for the hacker. So these companies that are using staging servers, production servers, so some of them are using it for storing new products that they are working on
Mm-hmm.
for testing. So UAT environments. So these sometimes get affected and then they slow down, and there comes a point where they notice it, and or maybe it goes down, and that's when they realize, oh, okay, it's a crypto miner.
I see.
Now,
And
if you had monitoring in place, then you would probably have detected it early on.
and how vulnerable would you say like the average internet user is to these kind of attacks? Because I would imagine that like the big money comes from, as you said, going for these companies, whether small or large.
If you say an average company, I mean, I can, like, let's say I have a team of 5 people, which I do. I mean, I have a team of 5 to 6 core people who I've worked with very closely for a while. I can point them in a direction and they can take down the company. It's not as difficult as people think, even if you have good security in place. Um, the average user, I mean, if it were a targeted attack, then yes, there's things that you can do to prevent it. But an average user is usually more likely to fall for a scam, or maybe a weak password or leaked passwords, not changing their like the common things. Make sure you
Mm-hmm.
have to have, if you are not a public figure, if you are not somebody who might be targeted, and just make sure you have your basic things like 2F, like multi-factor enabled through an authenticated app or something, because now even with OTPs we are seeing SIM swapping. So even unless you have an eSIM, there's a chance that you might get your OTP might get compromised. Just make sure you change your password regularly. There's one more tip, since I see you've opened Have I Been Pawned? There's one more tip I usually give to like older people who use one email address for everything. Is that there's a saying in security: if it's connected, it's vulnerable. That's a saying. Now, connected meaning, now let's say you have one email address that you only use for finance. Let's say you created a new Gmail account and then you decided to use it only for your bank accounts, or maybe just one bank, and you never give it to anybody else. How are you ever going to receive a scam email? There is no way to find that email address. It's not listed anywhere other than that one bank. So what I suggest people is, keep one email address for your banking. Never use it for any other communication ever. Don't sign in anywhere. Don't use it for anything. Just banking. Then use one that is for your, maybe Domino's or something, like where you get your food or something delivered to your home or something.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it secure. Keep one for your regular communications, and keep one that is a throwaway. And then use temporary emails, like temp email. There's a lot of sites that provide temporary emails. Let's say you go to some site and you want to download a PDF or a data sheet, and they're saying, give us your email address to download this. Just use a temporary email. You know you're not coming back to that site anyway. So if you segregate those, there are less chances of a person, like an individual, being compromised. But never use your work email for these things.
Yeah, no, there's quite a bit more to it than people realize. I mean, look, I'm no cybersecurity expert. I grew up around computers, like just growing up, um, and have installed, as any kid has, plenty of viruses trying to download some
Yep.
fucking music or games or whatever, and learned fairly quickly early on not to do that shit. And you kind of get a nose for it. Like you can kind of tell like what is and isn't a scam. Um,
Yep.
more so these days. It's hard to describe sometimes too, because it just the way that you could feel it about an email or a certain message or something. But
Yep.
there's a shocking amount even that I've seen in my workplace, of just how, I don't know, just absolutely like just no existing protocols for actual cybersecurity. In my line of
Yep.
work, I work at a veterinary clinic, and we handle a lot of credit cards naturally. And
Hmm.
the way that we manage it, I won't go into detail, but it has just made me think like, man, all it takes is one disgruntled employee. All it takes is like just firing the wrong person or making an
Yeah.
enemy out of someone, and like they could just be an enterprising individual that one day decides they've had enough, and boy, the damage they could do.
Oh yes, definitely. And it'd be hard to find as well because you don't have policies in place. You've not documented anything, so you don't even know where this is coming from when it does happen.
Yeah, it is shockingly easy to get away with a lot of these things because, like we
We
started in
had
the
this.
episode. No, sorry, go ahead,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. We had this one client who was they were an HRMS software, so they were a software as a service product,
Mm-hmm.
and they were building like payroll and attendance management and that kind of stuff in India here. And one of their ex-employees used to have Chrome or Google Chrome autofill on her system, and
Oh.
she had saved all the passwords to her internal all the services that they were using internally to sign in for the employees. She had all of them on autofill, didn't have 2FA enabled, and she had left the organization. But these guys, because they didn't have any procedures in place and the IT team was busy because the company was scaling so fast, they forgot to purge delete the dead accounts, like the accounts of employees who might have left or something.
Mm-hmm.
And an attacker had found his or her way in through a data leak that year that leaked that Chrome autofill. This was a big data leak at the time. So he found the credentials, he got in, and since it was a dead account, nobody was monitoring it, nobody was communicating with it. He had been like just sniffing stuff, like monitoring stuff for about 2 or 3 weeks, we assumed from the logs. And then they faced an attack. Overnight, we had to set up firewalls and whatnot to get those things done. So yeah, that was quite something. So it does happen. I mean, if with ex-employees, with dead accounts, with all kinds of data leaks, so you have to be careful. You have to have monitoring in place at every checkpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be a minimum for anyone that uses a computer at work to understand these things. And it's very shocking that like this isn't something that is like taught in schools, because at least here in Canada, they, like basic computer literacy, just like, oh, don't go on, strange websites, or don't, talk to strangers, don't tell anyone your age and all that. But there's not really nobody really goes over like, hey, this is what a phishing email looks like. This is how you
Yeah.
properly select for a password. This is how you um, decentralize your presence on the internet. Like just all
Hmm.
these different tactics that you could use. It's very strange how often it gets overlooked, and yet it could literally, I mean, one day, especially as AI just keeps getting better and better, it could completely just upend your life.
Yep. True. And if you get a driver's license, they teach you how to drive. But when you get on the internet, there is no procedure. I mean, there's no way to show you. It's just you buy a connection and you're on the internet. So, yeah, pretty much. You talked about, installing viruses. I did that a lot. I mean, I have reinstalled Windows probably hundreds of times when I was young. I used to like download all kinds of, GTA Vice City mods and stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
cracked versions of software,
Key
whatnot.
generators.
And yeah, yep, a lot of them for FIFA 07 and all those games. I remember like buying every single game pirated. I still remember that. And not just software, I used to mess around with hardware. I've had to replace my motherboard at least 3 times. I remember getting scolded for that. Yeah,
Oh no.
keygens
I
were a thing. Yeah, and speaking of motherboard, I just shorted my laptop's motherboard last night, so it hasn't gone. Like I mean, I'm still like that kid who messes around with stuff. So I have a broken fan in my laptop, so I just wanted to see what's wrong. So I opened it up and I forgot to disconnect the battery. And then when I was messing around with the
oh.
screwdriver, I just saw a spark, and then I remembered that I haven't unplugged the battery. But luckily, my laptop was working. I turned it on; it was working, so it's not that bad. But yeah, I didn't have that static band, like anti-static band, with me, so I was being careful. But I accidentally touched a circuit, and then I realized, oh shit, I need to disconnect the battery.
That's
Uh,
good. Yeah, glad that it wasn't fried.
yeah, I'll be careful next time.
Certainly, yeah. It's it's not something that I thought I would ever have to like give so much thought to. Like recently I've transitioned to all my email to like Proton Mail, all just about like
Mhm.
a lot of my services to their network. I'm a big fan of how they have the stuff set up. I just got sick and tired of like having Google Play ads in my email. I was like, this is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah,
Why? Like, how do they? There's no way that this is just free. They're 100% selling my data and
exactly.
somehow like using my email data as well, which I don't feel comfortable with at all. I understand like browsing, like me clicking on
Mhm.
ads or whatever. Okay, fine, by all means, but in my email, like, no, fuck off, that's mine. I really like, I was just
Yep.
really disillusioned by that. I was like, yeah, I'm not using your services ever again, fuck that.
Yeah, when I the first time I saw an ad on Gmail, I was like, "What the hell is this?" It made me realize that, oh, all right, yeah, I have to remember that this is free for a reason. I'm the customer, like, sorry, I'm the product. So
Yeah,
yeah, that definitely gave me a reality check when I saw the ad for the first time.
yeah. And there's also like in terms of cybersecurity, it's not even always related to the internet. Sometimes it's just like little details that you miss. Like I remember when I first learned about metadata that's contained within photos, and that
Yep, yep.
on your phone, if you don't disable the geotagging feature,
Mm,
then inside that metadata you can find information of where the photo was taken. So you don't even have to be a super sleuth like GeoGuessr wizard to look up like
yeah,
where this
true.
photo was taken. You could just put it into like some kind of analyzing program and extract the information from there, which is scary because like how many photos of people on social media just have that added in their feature? Like I've had to tell my friends that like you got to turn that off because that's you're just waiting for someone to like take advantage of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I even got scared when the first time on my phone I saw my gallery, like inside the phone, it segregating photos based on faces.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh no, they put facial recognition in my phone. I don't like that at all because I keep things very disconnected. Like I have everything disconnected from each other. There's this one really fun thing called DuckDuckGo
Oh yeah,
browser, and they have this on the Android version. They have this like I use Android, so on their application they have this thing called app tracking protection. If you turn that on, it shows which app is communicating with which app, like internally in your phone. Let me send you a screenshot. I'll just send you a quick screenshot.
sure.
Yeah, so it's right now the one that I'll send it on this channel. Wait. So what it's showing me is which app on my phone is communicating with the other one.
Oh yeah, I see it. Oh yeah, like how it blocks all the tracking
Yeah, the
attempts and
ad
whatnot.
tracking and all that. Yep.
Yeah,
Like
it's very
I
useful.
don't use any Meta services, and still Meta is tracking it. So it's crazy.
Yeah, I used to use DuckDuckGo as my main search engine until around the time of the Ukraine war. They made a post on their social media saying that they were going to be altering certain search results in order to combat what they deemed as misinformation. And while I understand taking that stance, because
Mm-hmm.
if Russians are known for anything on the world stage right now, it's their um unending hunger to fuck shit up abroad with psyops.
Yep.
But even that like made me uncomfortable, so I switched completely to Brave, and I like that's been my main platform ever since. DuckDuckGo is a great search engine. Highly recommend that people use it instead of Google. But for me lately, it's just been like Perplexity or even Brave search. That was really the only thing that I didn't like about DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, I switched to Brave also a few months back, and also I tried Perplexity after saw it on your podcast. I I never like I had tried its AI, but I never used it for search. And when the first time I used it for search, I realized why people use it. It's crazy. I don't have to go through 15 links. I just need to search, and then it'll give me the entire gist of whatever it is I'm searching. It was fun. So now it has become my go-to as well.
Oh, it's perfect. It's beautiful. I luckily I had it when I got it at the time, my point in my life, I had moved into a new place and I had a bit of a crisis at like 3 a.m. My neighbor's pipe had burst and was starting to flood my apartment, and I was like, I didn't know what the fuck to do. I was a little bit drunk, and I was like, shit, I like, who do I even, I mean, who am I even gonna call in this city right now? Like, who's gonna come? Like,
Right.
do I just call 911? Like, what's going on? So I typed in, into Perplexity, like, hey, I have a pipe that's flooding. I'm in this city. Like, what number do I call? What do I do? Who do I contact? And it gave me a whole
Hmm.
breakdown of like, here's who you can call right now. Here's what they can do. Here's when they can show up, and it just gave me all this
Nice.
information. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I would have never got this with Google.
Yeah, it would probably taken you half an hour to go through all the links and figure it out.
Yeah, it's saved my ass quite a few times, and like any research that I have to do for any of my writing or my podcast or whatever, Perplexity is my go-to. It's the only like AI subscription that I am more than glad to pay for. I'm a big
Hmm.
fan of their service, and I really hope they start overtaking some of the big search engines and get the recognition they deserve, because they got some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I think they're giving out free pro versions to Indian universities, like university students.
Oh, perfect. That would have been handy a couple of years ago when I went to university, but they didn't exist back then.
Yeah, I'm also no longer studying, so I do miss having a .edu email address and using it to get discounts everywhere. Sad.
Yeah, no, Perplexity is amazing. I love services like this, and Brave too. I'm a really big fan of how more mainstream stuff like this is having to become. Like VPNs didn't
Hmm.
used to be as big of a deal as they are now. Like it's like 10 years ago or something. And Netflix and those kind of services have helped popularize it because people can get
Yeah.
media, and it's not geo locked to any specific country.
Mhm.
But I'm really glad that it's kind of like taken off into the mainstream.
Yeah. Speaking of VPN, there's this one amazing one called Mulvad. I don't know if you've heard of it.
How
It's
do you spell it?
MULLVAD. MULLVAD.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really cool because they don't store your payment information. They don't even ask for an email address. They just give you a 16-digit account number.
Hmm.
Like, they don't store anything. They just give, and it's the same price no matter if you buy it for 1 month, 1 year, or you know, it's forever the same price. There's no different pricing if you buy a monthly plan or yearly plan. It's fun. I use this all the time.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a smart way to go about it. I mean, that's the main concern with like VPNs, like big companies like Nord, is you wonder like, okay, well, you guys are, funneling all this data, but what are the
Yeah.
chances that the FBI or the CIA or whomever can just put in a warrant that nobody has to know about, and then next thing you know, my info is just there.
Yeah, true. And I mean, I know this one guy who is an expert red teamer. We can go into what red teaming is afterwards. But What he does is for his research work and all, he buys a VPS and he sets up Open VPN on it. Like he buys a server through Bitcoin or something, like, and then sets up his own open source VPN on it. Like he doesn't even trust like these VPN services. So that's another interesting way to do it is buy a VPS and then set up your own VPN on it to proxy your traffic through it.
I mean, honestly, like realistically, that's the best way to go about it because no matter like how much I love Proton VPN, I know that there have been. I think there was a couple of incidents where they didn't hand over the actual data of the websites that the person visited or anything like that. I think it
Mm,
was like little shreds of metadata, but they were summoned by a court order. So even though like Proton came out and they're very, very, very much so against having that having that responsibility to give it to any foreign government, I'm pretty sure they're still beholden to an extent, no matter how much they try. And I mean, even even if you don't have like a subpoena or a warrant, like I covered the Ross Ulbricht case with the
mhm.
Silk Road story. Are you familiar with it?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, so
I
I
think I
covered.
was watching your stream.
Yeah, I covered it with a friend of mine, or we stream on Wednesdays, and I mean there was an instance where it's not proven, and I don't think it ever will be, uh, but the FBI somehow got a hold of the servers that were both in Germany and I think Iceland as well that hosted the Silk Road. They just somehow got, the location of these servers
Hmm.
and where they were. And the explanation that they gave in this open declaration before the trial, a bunch of security experts came out and were like, yeah, that's actually impossible. Like, you can't get that kind of information by doing this. But the judge
Right.
accepted it because obviously the judge is not a cybersecurity expert. So that only
Hmm.
leads me to believe that the NSA was somehow responsible for that. And that's I'm of that mind now that like if the government really wants to get into your shit, they will find a way, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about
So
it. Absolutely nothing.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, so where are you based? Are you in USA or Canada?
I'm in Canada right now.
All right, but still, Western countries are, I would say, still a bit privacy conscious. I mean, here in India, I cannot expect, like, I cannot just expect anything at all because, even WhatsApp was recent till up until recently, it was, fighting in the Supreme Court here on whether they will share the data or not, and WhatsApp said we won't, and the Indian authorities said you either share or you get out. As simple as that.
Hmm. And also, I mean,
So
like just geopolitically, where you guys are located, with Pakistan and how China is involved in that whole region, I would imagine that there's quite a bit of foreign interference going on there.
definitely, I mean, we've had issues with Bangladesh recently that were, their government was toppled and they had civil wars kind of situation going on,
Hmm.
and people said it was the CIA. I mean, you know, I don't know, but it's quite possible. I'm hoping Trump coming into power will stabilize things because he's had good relations with India. Let's see.
Yeah, I hope
We
so
do have
too.
more issues with Pakistan, though. We've had like state-sponsored terrorists. It's pretty common now. I mean, in the northern regions across the border, we've had quite a lot of issues.
Yeah, no, I could only imagine um, what that must be like, and I hope so too. With Trump coming into office, that some of these things are going to get cleared up. And I mean, it's only been like not even a week since he's been in power, and quite a bit has happened. Um, I'm not fully optimistic regarding like a full transformation of
Hmm.
the deep state as it is, but I mean, look, any like step towards kind of unraveling that would be good because as much as the media likes to say that China and Russia and all these foreign actors are a threat, the United States does plenty of meddling of their own and has been for decades,
Yeah,
regardless of which president is in power. So there's clearly some kind of force that is just keeps moving this engine towards a certain group of interests that like we're all just kind of at the whims of their decisions, and even in Canada we still get affected by it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you look at things, and that's why there's. I have a certain affinity, like I have a certain thing for countryside in US, with the whole, small government, leave me alone. I'm gonna keep my guns kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have this dream. Like if I retire someday, the US countryside is where I want to retire. Like I have lots of guns, large ranch, and nobody comes there. People leave me alone because I am a strong believer in gun rights. I'm a strong believer in government leaving people alone. But living in India, I mean, the the population that we have, like we need a strong government, and unfortunately, whether we like it or not, government intervention becomes necessary in certain cases. You cannot just leave things to people all the time. But hopefully that gets solved because we're still recovering. I mean, if you look at India's history, it's been crazy. 200 years of British rule, and people idolize imperialism and all, but it was for India it was quite difficult, and it's like think of psyops like 100 years ago, and that's what they did. The Western countries didn't know what kind of things were happening in India. Only Indians knew, and even still now, people, when Indians criticize the British, not the current British, like
Mm-hmm.
the people who ruled over us, oppressed us at the time. People criticizing, hey, at least you got railroads, at least you got telephones. You wouldn't have. Well, there are a lot of countries that were not under British rule, and they still have telephones and railroads. I mean, India was the most affluent place in the world at the time before British rule. So we had quite a difficult time, and then to bounce back from that with this level of population and being split into India and Pakistan. And on the right, there's Bangladesh, and on the upper right, it is like northeast, there's China, and that's on the south we have Sri Lanka. And they recently had issues. Their economy was going really bad. We helped them out
Mm-hmm.
a little bit, but in each direction you go, there's either instability or there's enmity, some form of rivalry. So it's and still look at the speed at which we are growing, even with all the issues. So it's quite crazy, but optimistic about the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, here in North America, we're not dealing with anything nearly that substantial of a threat. You know, we're basically like an island continent with I mean, the only troublemaker that we could really even think of is like Mexico. And if you're in Canada, that's a world away essentially. I mean, it might as well be at that point.
Right.
It's almost in the other hemisphere. Um
Yeah.
so yeah, I could imagine that would make for a very tumultuous time. I mean, look, I'm not even true. Like I'm Canadian because I'm a citizen and I've lived in this country long enough. But my original background is Russian. Um,
Oh, okay.
so I am no stranger to knowing a tumultuous history. Like I didn't grow up in the Soviet Union.
Mm.
I was born on the tail end of its collapse. Um, and you were talking about like psyops and during the British colonial days. I mean, fuck the amount of stuff that I've heard about my family's life in Soviet Russia, what it was like. I could not imagine living in a time like that. But
Yeah.
it's as you said. Now with each passing day, with each passing week, I have more hope because this this kind of innate like drive towards freedom and being left the fuck alone, like more and more people are kind of starting to adopt this belief, and the kind of tools that we have access to is unlike anything our ancestors ever had, and it's becoming
Yep.
more and more attainable, towards the future, even with like all the stuff like the AI and Sam Altman's WorldCoin and all that. There's still plenty of
Mm.
people that are trying to assert that kind of dominance and control over their life.
Yeah, I mean, I can't wait till that feeling of leave me alone becomes mainstream, because in a way I feel like that is what will build real communities where everyone understands the importance of individual liberty, and the balance of it with how a small government should operate. Once that becomes mainstream, I think we are getting closer to a better society. Let's see. And yeah, I mean, you talked about Russia. Imagine, I can't even imagine what Indian foreign ministry and all these people who handle the international relations in my country would have to go through, because you have to balance relations with US, you have to keep China at bay. and you have to maintain good relations with Russia, who recently is in war with Ukraine, and most of the countries are pretty much putting sanctions on. The US is putting sanctions on Russia and all,
Hmm.
and Russia is India's biggest defense partner. Like we've had very 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 good relations with Russia, so it's crazy. I mean, balancing all this stuff, and then in the middle of it all, expecting. Uh, Look, you don't really know what the future holds. I mean, with all the crazy stuff happening geopolitically as well as on an economic level.
Yeah, yeah, things are changing so fast that it's almost impossible to keep up. And if you get too complacent in that feeling, it could really leave you feeling really powerless, as I was in the last, like, at least like during COVID. That's what it felt like. I mean, for a lot of people, I would imagine also. But I no, I have faith because I'm seeing it even here in Canada. Like, we have a reputation for being a polite people, but
Yep.
even politeness has its limits, and people are kind of starting to turn to the other side now, which is great to see. I just I wish it was a little bit more focused and less emotional. And I understand why that is, because I mean, even just in my lifetime, the fact that like mainstream media, at least here in like North America, trust has like completely plummeted. Like less and less people believe in the quote unquote Canadian or American dream, in the sense of like, oh, you go to school, get good grades, go to university, get a good job, and then you work at the company for 30, 40, 50 years, whatever. Like all that is done. All that is gone. All those old
Right.
systems are gone by the wayside. I don't know what that's like in India. Do you guys have like a version of that kind of myth?
Well, not as like there's no such thing as an Indian dream, although there's a couple of things that are highly coveted in the society. Who obviously you see these politicians and all their sons and daughters. Like it's a fun game. Look up any politician who is like a loudmouth, and their children will probably not be in India. They're studying at Oxford, they're studying at Harvard, MIT. Like
Mm.
they are in Ivy Leagues, and like their children are in Ivy Leagues. They are here, like inciting protesters to go and do this and go and do that and whatnot. But in terms of what kind of things people look up to, education is still a big one. The youth is now moving a little bit more towards entrepreneurship, which is good because we need more small-sized businesses to generate employment and not rely on the government. Which
Mhm.
brings me to another point: is the government. I mean, people consider government jobs pretty, they have a very high status in social in society, pretty much. So there's
Mm.
something called Indian Administrative Service, and there's something called Indian Police Service. There's others as well called Indian Revenue Service, Indian Forest Service, Indian Foreign Service. And these are like there's an exam called UPSC. Just look up UPSC Civil Service Examination, and just look at the rate from UPSC.
UPSC. Okay.
Yeah, just look up the rate of how many students pass. It's probably one of the most difficult exams in the world. Oh, it's up there in the top 10 probably. The ratio to which people like maybe 300 to
Wow.
500,000 people apply, and maybe 1,500 pass out of that. And
Point
out
two
of those
percent.
1,500, yeah, and out of those 1,500, only 50 to 60 get Indian Administrative Service. And these people directly go into the top of the bureaucracy, like directly.
Huh.
Within 10 to 20 years of service, let's say you join the finance ministry as a secretary. In 15 years of service, you would be the undersecretary under the finance minister, which means every single bank in India is reporting to you. Imagine that. So you have to be the smartest of the smartest to pass these exams. But these are considered pretty high level.
Interesting. That's that is very
The
interesting.
reason people covet government jobs is because of the security. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's very hard to fire a government employee.
Huh. I mean, that makes sense, as you were saying. From what you told me about India's political transition in the last couple hundred years, is that there's been this need to have a more involved state in the lives of the people. Here in Canada, it's, I mean, it's it's flipped in a way, but it's under the current administration, they've really ramped up how much public service jobs there are available. Like
Mm.
right now, I think about 60 to 70% of the Canadian economy is made up of independent and small businesses. Um, but the at least the current rate of public administration, I think it's grown in the last, I think, 10 years or so. Yeah, I think since Trudeau came to power, the amount of the workforce that works in government jobs has grown by 40%, which is pretty, like, that is a pretty radical increase
Mm.
for a lot of people that don't even want to come into the office to work in person. Like there was almost
Right.
they almost tried to host a
Yeah.
strike, I'm pretty sure, a couple months back, where like they were really upset about having to force to go
About
back
coming
to
to
the
office.
office. Yeah, and I mean, look, I get it. There's a lot of jobs that could be done digitally or like from home and whatnot, and it saves on a lot of
Yeah.
costs. But if we're gonna make that transition, then like we got to do something with all those empty offices, or at the very least, like coming in person to your job. That's very different than just working digitally all the time. Especially if you have to
Yeah,
work in a team.
and you need productivity, like some form of monitoring to see whether you're being productive or not.
Absolutely. And just like the effort that it takes to like just like show up to work on a regular basis, like day in, day out, so that you're not just like sitting in sweatpants and whatnot. Like you can't deny that there's secondary and tertiary effects to doing this, like for one, like how much money has been lost in public transit because people are just, they're not going in anymore, or, just buying gas or
True.
maintaining their car or what have you. There's a lot of industries that suffer as a result. Or like, what about all those restaurants and places that people used to go for lunch at work, and
Mm.
now, like, when you have that workforce that's just not showing up, what happens to those businesses? Do they just shut down, or what happens to them?
Yeah, and what if we were going to adopt this model where most of the jobs are done remote and from your home? What about the impacts that we cannot measure just now? What about 2 generations later, where nobody has any social skills anymore and they cannot tolerate being in person with anybody? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what about that? You know, don't you think social anxiety would go up if you just, I think being social is a perishable skill, at least for introverts like me. I mean, if I haven't been, if I stay in my room for 3 months, it's going to be much more difficult for me to go out and get some coffee versus if I was doing that every day. Right? It'd be much easier for me. And uh, we already know the effects of, sitting in one room, staring at a screen all the time alone. And I don't think you can substitute that. I mean, on a long term, that just doesn't work. You need some form of social interaction.
Oh,
You need to have
absolutely.
that in place.
Absolutely, no doubt. It is of the utmost importance. I've only worked one job where I've had to like work from home. I have a second one now, but it's not nearly as intense. Like I used to do sales for a B2B SaaS company, and cold calling is a part of the sales gig. So like I knew that obviously you're not going to be going around door to door all the time. So I knew that was a part of the gig. But I remember the first time that we met with our team, like actually in person, for this event, and it
Yeah.
felt so awkward, even though like I had talked to them, on screen, on video, on call, like so many times. It was just so weird seeing them in person, and I was like, oh, this is like
Yeah.
not a good feeling. I should not be feeling this way towards my coworkers. Like
Yeah.
there's a certain aspect of your social life that you just miss out of, like clocking out of your shift and being like, hey, like who wants to go, get a drink or catch a movie, or
Mm.
whatever. Just that little social life. It really like just absolutely kills that kind of culture. Because look, like
Yeah. How do you build the relation? That's the question. Yeah.
yeah, and like you can have like game nights or whatnot, but it's not nearly like the same. I mean, I've seen footage of how like the Japanese, like after work they go even with like their bosses and whatnot, and they just drink till like
Yeah.
2 3 a.m. and then they get up and they go into work. And I understand that culture has its own problems and how they overwork themselves, sure, but there's
Mm.
some camaraderie there that I'm like, man, I wish I had that. That would have been hella cool, just
Yeah.
getting blackout drunk with my managers in my early 20s, you know, like that would have been fun.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and that builds a bond. I mean, and that you just cannot do virtually. That's for sure.
Yeah, it kind of adds like a new dimension to the team because now it's not just about like getting the work done. There's like something outside of that, you know, a separate side that you see to people. Whereas if you just meet them on a screen all the time, like it's not nearly the same thing.
Yeah. So, what do you do currently at a veterinary clinic?
Oh, I work as a receptionist. I've kind of bounced around from job to job. The university degree that I got is basically fucking toilet paper at this point. I graduated with a degree in sociology and social sciences, which is
Okay.
absolutely worthless unless you want to do research. And
Research.
you're yeah, you're talking about like, man, you got to go for a PhD or at least like a master's, and I did not care for it nearly that much. And also just the whole it's really been sad to see, but the whole discipline has become a clown show because all these ideas of social justice and everything have worked its way into it. Um, but yeah, right now I work at a veterinary clinic, and I also do some work for this company called Outsider Supply. It's a clothing company that's based in the States, and I actually got the job off Twitter.
Okay.
Um, they make really like not conceptual clothing, but they take like old pieces that are kind of historically significant. They add kind of like a modern
Uh,
twist to it. It it's a very like I don't know how to describe it in one sentence, but
Artistic.
the idea of it is to take all these great pieces and movements from past art, uh, past art history movements, and like make them modern, and kind of
Right.
celebrate this idea of the 21st century Renaissance that we're living through right now, basically. And it's interesting work
Yeah.
because
Sorry, I got a
yeah,
phone call.
no worries.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I decline it. It's fine.
Yeah, it's interesting work because I was into art growing up, but I had never like granularly kind of like studied art movements and art history in this way. So it's allowed me to kind of flex that muscle a little bit. And I've never really had the
Mhm.
luxury of paying attention to that stuff much, but I'm getting a new appreciation for it. So I'm really thankful that I was able to land the job off Twitter, no less.
And Twitter has been a blessing, especially recently. Joining the tech community on Twitter has been quite interesting for me as well. And seeing people actually get jobs is the most fun part. I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, people are just there shit posting, and then the next day, they're interviewing and getting a job. I mean, fun.
Oh, it's amazing. I don't know what I would be doing with my life if I didn't discover Twitter because uh there's no other community or space like it on the internet right now. And even though I'm banned for the time being, I still see just the absolute like the sheer alpha in that
Mm.
platform is like you can't compare it to anything else. Like Facebook doesn't have anything close to it, not YouTube, not Instagram, like none of these platforms can even come close. And what I like about it is that like there are more nice and civil people uh than I've ever like interacted with on any other space on the internet. Like I don't think I would have been able to manage like getting an interview off of anywhere else. Like if I tried to get this shit on LinkedIn, geez, yeah, good fucking luck. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's not that's not gonna happen on LinkedIn. X is really the only place where that could happen.
true. And I mean, nice and civil people. That's for sure. We hear I hear people say, Twitter is crazy and toxic and all. I am yet to face that. I mean, I have not met a single person, or maybe I just don't get in enough arguments. But I'm yet to meet a single people who has been maybe racist towards me, or maybe uncivil towards me. Just haven't found anybody yet. Or maybe it's just that I've been part of good circles. Everybody is nice, everybody's helpful, it's fun to interact. They get the joke, they get the humor, they get the sarcasm, and the best part is they understand the fact that we are all just humans, and sometimes we shitpost, sometimes we talk about tech stuff, sometimes we help each other out. It's not like LinkedIn or Instagram or where people come with fixed mindset of on LinkedIn they are doing something, on Instagram they are doing something, and everybody is trying to get a one up on each other. Whereas this community inside Twitter has been like pretty cool. They've been they're supporting. I mean, this one guy named Tuna. Is it called Tuna or Tuna? I don't know.
Yeah, Tuna.
It's
Yeah,
Tuna probably.
I
Yeah,
actually interviewed him
I
for
know.
one of
But
my earlier episodes.
yeah, he's really cool. So he just gave me a shout out, and like overnight I got a bunch of followers. I joined a space with him. We discussed some cybersecurity stuff. He's doing great work. He's just his whole thing is like get a job. It's so fun to watch. Like he's just pushing people to get jobs, and this is so cool because like everybody wants to become a millionaire overnight. He's just like that. No, get a job first and then build something on side. It's fun to watch. So yeah, it's there's a lot of cool people on this small. I'm sure there are circles in Twitter where things are pretty toxic and stuff. But if you stay in certain groups, it's like it's something that's like you said, it's not anywhere else. I mean, I've never felt more. Um, I've never felt so much like I belong somewhere till now on the internet. Maybe in some older days in maybe some IRC servers or something, but where we were discussing cybersecurity stuff. But other than that, I don't think I've felt the community spirit on the internet ever like this one. Not even on Reddit. Like it's just not there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's nothing that matches it. And there's plenty of people like Tuna that are just that are willing to take time out of their day to like give people a shout out or just like write extensively on the topic. Like I've seen plenty of toxicity, especially when it comes to like culture war topics, or
Yeah,
anything to
yeah,
do
definitely.
with yeah, or anything to do with politics, and that's I mean that's only natural. Or like if people just like misconstrue words, and that's bound to happen on the internet. But even with all of its toxicity, I mean the amount of opportunities that I had access to before and after Twitter, I can't compare it. Just having the exposure from all these people that are like 100 times smarter than me in their own fields, and getting their
Yeah.
like little inputs on different topics, it has opened my eyes up to a new world that I never even thought existed, and I'm endlessly thankful for it. So I just hope that it keeps going this way, and I hope that it keeps expanding because um, at this rate, I mean, if we just keep iterating and improving on it, or you know the owners of the platform do anyways, it can only get better. And I'm really looking forward to it like actually becoming the everything app.
Yeah, definitely. And likewise, I mean, I wouldn't be talking on a show. So the thing is, I had like pretty much zero digital presence till about 2024 or maybe end of 2023. And 2024, I started because I've been into cybersecurity since I was very young. I was
Mm-hmm.
always extra paranoid, so I never had any kind of digital presence, like a little bit, but
Mm.
I try to minimize it. And then at the near the end of 20, like in 2024, I got more active on X, and then I realized, you know what, maybe it's not that bad. I had a couple of like anonymous accounts, like anon accounts, but I deleted them. I decided to go full in on my personal account, and I'm not even a content creator or anything as such. I'm just interacting with people, and I've not done that before ever. Like I've not interacted with people in a public manner with my own name at all. And I just decided let's do it. And then at the end of 2024, I decided screw it. I don't care. I'm going to put myself out there because there's only so much a hacker can do. And anyway, it's not like I'm doing something illegal. So I just had to push through that extra paranoia and start posting more. So that's what I did. And in 2024 I decided that I'm not going to be against you know talking publicly or being appearing publicly. I had this crazy paranoia up until now, but now I'm just pushing through it. I mean, last year or maybe a year before that, I would have never said yes to this. I would have never gotten on a call or a podcast and done something like this, but now I'm open to it. So I'm just experimenting with stuff. And and there's no platform on earth that would have me on. Like only on X would you find a guy named Whitepill who is posting crazy stuff and is like, hey, let's get on a call. Let's get on a podcast. Let's record something. Let's talk. So it's pretty fun. I mean, I'm having a lot of fun. I have plans in 2025 to post more cybersecurity stuff because till now I've just been shit posting and venting. I'm planning to get more serious about sharing stuff that I'm learning.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm kind of in the same boat with that, like kind of apprehension towards social media. Like growing up, like I'd use it to like connect with friends and whatnot, but I never really cared all that much about it. I never even had. I don't, no, I had a Twitter account for a little bit, but I never really posted anything. Um, and it's only in like been in the last like couple of years where I realized like, oh, there's actually a lot of like really cool shit happening, especially now that
Yeah.
Elon Musk owns the platform. Um, and it's as we've said before, like there's nothing that can compare to this kind of platform, um, at all, ever, and it actually feels genuine to an extent when you interact on it, and when like just
Yeah.
you either find like just I don't know the right account to follow, or you just like you find this like post that just it gives you insight into things that you would not have access to ordinarily. And I'm a big
Do you
proponent of
think
it.
do you think feeling safe in a community like Teapot gave you more of a push to start posting?
I think for me, what it came down to, like part of it, when I saw the payouts happen, I was like, oh, this is like this is real. Like people are actually like making
Yeah.
money off of it. And initially, when they started, it was very much so based on like as long as you got impressions. So obviously, like everybody like did the classic like uh here's this thing I heard,
Engagement farming.
and yeah, and like and here's this thread, and then it's just a thread of all these
Hmm.
posts, and that's what it became flooded with. But even that, when I saw that, I was
Right.
like, okay, well, like this is gonna level out eventually. They're gonna adjust for this because clearly this is not what they want the platform to be. But even just seeing that, I was like, oh, this gives me hope that like I can actually have a future in content creation that doesn't involve me just like spewing out slop or like trying to, Mr.
Yeah.
Beast my way through it or try to like get all these like fancy cuts and edits and all that. Like I could actually make money off of genuine content.
Hmm.
Um and as soon as I saw that, and just when I heard about the Twitter files and I saw that all the posting about it was happening on Twitter, it was just kind of like a wake up call for me. I was like, "Oh, this is the only platform where people are openly discussing these topics, and
Hmm.
the owner of the platform is like openly celebrating it and letting everyone just talk about it and discuss it." I was like, "Oh, this is real. This actually feels real. It doesn't feel like I have to worry about my post getting censored. I don't have to worry about like appearing in a certain political light. I felt like I could actually be myself." So I don't think it was so much the community for me. I think it was just the fact that Twitter had made such a radical transition, that to me I was like, oh, this is actually genuinely a place where people can just share opinions, as long as they're not like hurling slurs at each other and they're not
Yeah.
issuing death threats. Like, yeah, just about anything goes. For that, like to me, for that, like it gave me kind of like more of a push to be like, all right, I need to get on this platform because the most interesting people are on it and they are actively posting, and you can like ratio celebrities or well-known people or even community
Yeah.
notes, like stuff like that. I was like, wow, this is actually trying to maximize genuine engagement and less like TikTok slop bullshit.
Mm, yeah, true, and that's pretty much the same for me. I mean, I saw genuine content, like what content should be. It's like actual good stuff that you learn from, that you find interesting, that
Hmm.
is fun, that is actually funny or that's actually intellectual, not delusional stuff like LinkedIn or something, and not just clickbait like Instagram or YouTube. That's what attracted me, and people were being authentic. Like that's my favorite part is people being actually authentic. Then the another thing is you can literally just reach out to people. I mean, doesn't matter who. I mean, you see Paul Graham liking my tweet. I mean, that was fun. Like you see these big celebrities and venture capitalists and billionaires and all that. They're just interacting with an everyday person. I mean, that's fun to watch. And then you see some political figures like who's that guy who posted? It's probably a president or a prime minister or something who posted a screenshot of his stock portfolio, I think, or a Bitcoin or something. I don't
That was
remember, but
Malay.
Elon Musk. Yeah.
It was either Malay or the
No,
the
no,
guy
no.
in Argentina.
The other guy.
No, no.
The other guy who's the younger guy.
Oh my god, I forget his name, but I know. Oh, I think it's the president of El Salvador.
Probably.
I think.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's that's the guy, the one who
Yeah,
imprisoned all the criminals. Yeah, that's the one. He
yeah.
posted a screenshot of like his stock portfolio or something. Like it's that's a politician you know being authentic. I mean, talking like an everyday person. You look up any politician, their Twitter account is, hey, congratulations Donald Trump on your second victory and stuff like that. But you rarely see a high level politician posting just normal people stuff, like typing it out himself and sending it.
Well, there's also this guy. I forget his
Yep,
name. Yeah, he's
I've seen his
gotten
videos. Yeah.
he's gotten famous in the EU Parliament, and I love his style of content because he very basically breaks down like exactly how much he makes, how much like what kind
Yeah.
of allowances he has, what kind of votes are happening in the EU. And I think right now he's actually working on an open source app for like to enable I don't know if it's members of the EU or if it's actual like his constituency to
Mm.
vote on certain bills and all these different laws that they're trying to pass. I love the fact that he's kind of open sourcing democracy in that way because we are overdue for that kind of change. And he's posting it on Twitter and whatnot. Sorry, on Instagram and whatnot as well, obviously. But I love that a lot of the discussion is happening on X because like we're overdue for this kind of stuff. A lot of these systems are just they're so outdated and they really need to be shaken up from the inside out. And it's because of people like him that are actually like pushing the needle on this.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. I mean, the next generation that's going to come up, they are going to see through all the BS. If anybody is being fake, they're just going to be able to see through most of it. Growing up, like the next generation who's growing up in psyops, they're learning to identify stuff. I mean, especially and you talked about community notes. That's been fun because you just know people will have your back. You don't need to go and defend yourself. Like the community notes will do it for you. Like if you attack somebody and you are just being fake, earlier there was just no way to tell other than reading through the replies and hoping that the one reply that was being truthful was upvoted like light enough that it was on the top.
Hmm.
Otherwise you just didn't know. But with community notes, it's just right there. Like you don't even need to go and defend yourself if somebody is spewing BS. You just try to, like, people will do it for you. And that's fun. I mean, if somebody is a community notes like contributor, it's fun to watch what happens there before a community note is voted enough to go public. It's fun to watch what happens. Like people will put community notes that are worthless, and then other people will
Hmm.
come in and say, hey, no note needed. This is not, put it in the comments. This is not worth putting as a community note. And then sometimes it'll be two different sides arguing politically, and then the one with the most logic will come up and then go public. It's quite interesting to watch what happens behind the scenes.
Oh yeah, and I mean that all of that is not to say that like Twitter is not without its issues. Like
Yeah.
there's been some accusations thrown even like towards Elon Musk regarding like censorship and whatnot. And I mean, I right now like I'm banned because of some stupid spam filter bullshit. But even still, like I have faith that like out of all the platforms, Twitter is still going to be the place to be. I just I can't imagine any other space on the internet where I could have even grown out this like white pill identity and had so much good feedback on it. Because at the end of the day, like I didn't start this whole like the white pilling thing. It was around way before I came, and this idea has existed for. I mean, we can trace it back for centuries, but um, I like that I was able to come along at a time where this idea of white pilling and the white pill is like predominantly existing, at least in my Twitter circles, and people are openly celebrating the spirit of not just blind optimism, but like persevering through difficulty and all this technology that's enabling all this change and how so many people are able to improve their lives and not just like with tech but like I love that there's a celebration of like fitness and physical and mental health and um moving towards a traditional way of life and away from hedonism I don't know of anywhere else where people are kind of like really openly celebrating this kind of stuff, and they're just sharing resources or tips or tools. Like the other day, I interviewed this gentleman who actually doesn't live too far from me. He's in my neighborhood, I think. Um, he's this young student that's going to university, and he came up with this app or this web application, anyways, that uses your phone camera to detect your posture during certain lifts in the gym, um,
Nice.
and it like allows him to like essentially analyze his form. It does a little bit of motion tracking there, and it was just really cool to talk to somebody like that because I was like, man, this guy's like in his early 20s. This wasn't like a side project or anything, like not a school project, anyways. Like he just did this all on his own, and I've met like so many people ever since doing this podcast that are in that kind of same stage of life where they're just so optimistic for what the future holds and what can happen that it's infectious. You can't help but be excited along with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I mean, the people that are building crazy shit, I mean, the young people just learning stuff so fast and building stuff so fast, and so useful. And this app that you talked about now, it's stuck in my head. I have to go and try it because as someone who works out at 4 in the morning, there's no trainers available. There's
Hmm.
pretty much nothing. I mean, it's just me in the gym. So I've never really had anyone help me out other than just me looking in the mirror and making sure I'm doing it correctly and watching YouTube videos on the side as I'm trying out a new exercise. So this is going to be fun, definitely. And you know, that's the fun part about this group circle on Twitter is everybody's doing their own thing and everybody's cheering each other on. I mean, if you hear people, take help from these guys. There's this one guy, I'm sure you know him, who built an oralized app, uh,
Oh yeah,
Javin.
yeah.
I
I
think that's his
interviewed
name.
him. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the one. Then there's these guys are building that frogforge.net. What's his name? Sat and Major. I
Katsuragi.
think
Yeah.
Major something. Yeah, something like that. So it's fun to watch people build stuff, and we are the ones who get to try it for free. I mean, it's so cool to be, and you never know which of these is going to turn into a unicorn or something. And it's to be able to see, like, it's like being part of Silicon Valley in the early Facebook days and just watching everybody around you build cool stuff and then take off. It's that kind of, it's fun and super exciting, and the level of optimism that I have is only because of the people that I see on here. Otherwise, if you just look at the news for 15 minutes a day, I mean, you would think the world is going, like, it's a dumpster fire. When you interact with people like these and you realize that it's actually not everybody is stupid. I mean, people are aware about what's happening and they are trying their best to make things better, and there's a good chance that think that the future is looking pretty bright.
Yeah, absolutely. It's whenever I interact with any of those kind of people, the main takeaway that I always have is that like it look, I don't have to be like an expert in the field or like a skilled developer or the best orator. I the most important thing that I've found is just having not only just like belief in yourself, but just this idea that like yeah, you can just do stuff. Like you want to learn how to
Yeah,
have a certain skill or how to build something. There's going to be a circle out there on Twitter out there. There's going to be tutorials on YouTube, and it really fills me with hope when I see all these people do this, because that even though like their skills surpass my own, well, they got started at some point at zero, and they worked their way up. And regardless of what I'm doing, it just makes me look at my life and think, huh, well, I can just do stuff. Like I can just go out and make
yeah,
this happen. Doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to, have millions of users or millions of views or what have you. I can just do it, make it for
yeah,
myself, and see where it goes. And in that spirit, I wanted to ask you, in regards to the new generation or just up and comers, in regards to your field in
yeah.
cybersecurity, what are some of the trends that you've seen regarding like I don't know how people like is there more reliance on AI now? Is there like kind of different kind of digital literacy that these people have? Like what have you seen yourself?
So definitely reliance on. So do you mean companies that are getting security done, or do you mean people who are learning to become, cybersecurity professionals?
think we lost you there.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was asking, do you mean people who are learning to become cybersecurity professionals, or do you mean people who are investing into cybersecurity?
Oh, sorry, I misheard that. Well, I mean, just like people that are like just new up and coming people that are going into the field.
Right.
So whether they're joining consultant firms like yours or like working for
Mm.
companies, just like what you've seen from like the new generation of people going into this.
So when I was starting out, even before I was starting out, the mindset of a hacker was, we try to break into stuff just because for the fun of it. I mean, I myself started. I'll talk a little bit about how I started. There's two things I did. One was I was into radio frequency interceptions, so I'm a
Mm-hmm.
licensed amateur radio operator, and that's how I got like intercepting radio frequencies and decrypting and all that. And then after that, I got into like create like simple stuff that a teenager would do, like hacking into Wi-Fi, spying on a device that is connected to my Wi-Fi network, and stuff like that, or building phishing pages and playing pranks on friends through that,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And that was just the basic mindset: is you have something in front of you and you want to break into it and see what happens. Just try different stuff, like not just software. I mean, I used to open up all kinds of toys and appliances and laptops and computers and whatnot, and break stuff and build stuff and see where it goes. So that was the basic mindset, and that is the mindset that later turns into maybe a developer or a hacker. The now what's happening is what we're seeing is people gravitate a lot towards bug bounty, not because they are into breaking stuff, but just because of how incentivized it is. People
Mm-hmm.
post screenshots of, hey, Meta gave me $10,000 of bug bounty because I found this one bug. Or somebody's posting, hey, I got $100,000 bug bounty from Tesla or something.
Mm-hmm.
So people that is one reason people are going into it, but that's how most people are starting nowadays. It's because security has become like the companies have become so aware about security. Then now they have bug bounty programs. That's what people are doing, is learning basic web mobile security and then going and hunting on these bug bounty platforms like HackerOne or Bugcrowd. There are lots of them, and then through that they get introduced into cybersecurity. And there's a bit of transition when you move from a teenager who is in college, who is um, doing this for fun and making some pocket money, towards getting into real information security as a professional, where you are not just looking at exploiting vulnerabilities but also policies and how to put how to be an architect of security, how to build a network that is resilient and secure, how to put security practices in place. So the way people are starting out right now is mainly through bug bounty, and there are some who are more into hardware. There's this one guy that I know who is a bit senior to me. He is working on satellite security. He's
Wow.
on his way to build some cool stuff. He's exploit how to exploit the communications between uplink and like the uplink and downlink communications of a satellite. So that's pretty cool. He will be coming out with a product soon. I've spoken to him. Once he announces it, I'll repost it. But so there are people who are doing some niche stuff, but mainly that's the thing. People are getting into bug bounty, and then there are some core cybersecurity guys who are like the with the mindset of the old school. I just want to hack into stuff kind of people. These are the ones who build C2 their own C2 frameworks, develop their own malware. They know the low level assembly level coding, and they know the real stuff, and they do the things that turn into maybe find a 0-day vulnerability, or you know build something really cool like a super cool scanner or a tool that fuzzes pretty well compared to the existing tools. Like they do some crazy shit. I know a few people like those. I have just one guy. I'm not sure if I should say his name or not, but there's this one guy uh, who worked with me at a previous employer, and they sent him to this one electronic vehicle manufacturing company. It's one of the biggest in India. I won't say the name, but he was sent there for a red teaming project. And this guy is a brilliant, brilliant guy. He has like tons of certifications, all the industry standard, all the top certifications in the industry. He has them, and
Mm-hmm.
he's very active in the community. And he's pretty cool. So he's like probably at the time he was maybe 20, 19 or 20, and there's this company had a CISO. They have a big security program in place. They follow all the things. They had the best tools. They had the best EDR. EDR is an endpoint detection and response, so it's like an antivirus but it's more advanced. It
Mm-hmm.
gives the IT admin or the security head the ability to control it from a central server or something. So you can just like respond to an incident remotely. So if an employee is working from home, the laptop has this installed, they cannot plug in a USB and steal data, or they cannot, exfiltrate any GitHub repo or something.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy was sent in to compromise the Active Directory. And he did in 1 week what most people would require in probably 3 months to do. Like that level of intelligence and that level of skill in a 19 or 20-year-old, and he gets offers from all the big companies, but he is going to do his own thing, is what he has decided. So you see people that are, so there are these categories. One is people going to bug bounty and stuff just for fun, and then they turn into real infosec professionals as they enter the workforce. And some of them are like this, who just like to break stuff, who just like to learn the core, even if it's boring. They push through it and learn the actual fundamentals, and they learn to also build things on the side, write their own scripts, write their own malware. They're not script kiddies; they are actually doing the actual stuff, like Mr. Robot level stuff. So it's definitely there, and AI is also definitely picking up. AI is a learning assistant, is what I would say. It's good to have it on the side and help you learn something.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of implementation, there is a lot of AI coming in for automated tasks as well as threat detection. Threat detection is something where AI is picking up really, really fast. So where you have a large network that you're monitoring, and you need to look at so many things at once and determine a pattern to determine whether it's something malicious or not. That's where AI has come in place. So that's definitely there. But in terms of learning, AI is there to help you out. But I would still suggest just it's similar to coding. I mean, when you're coding, it's better to learn first, learn the fundamental, learn the syntax, learn how it's done, and then you can use AI. It's similar to that. I mean, I would rather you do stuff manually first, learn how an SQL injection is done to exploit an SQL injection vulnerability, then use an automated tool to just run and see if it's vulnerable or not. If you do that fundamental stuff, then later on you can use other tools with AI or without AI, the automated tools. If you know the fundamentals, it'll be much more helpful.
I see. And in regards to actual vulnerabilities and attackers, have you seen a lot of use of AI in that regard?
Well, I'm in my limited experience, not as much. I mean, you see attacks that are more targeted, or or they are automated. But to tell if it was AI or not is a bit difficult, because when you detect a compromise, so what we have seen is they send out, let's say, they send out something automated to check for a certain vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
If they detect something, then they come in and do the actual dirty work manually. That's something that I've seen repeatedly. Is the initial crawling that is to be done, that is automated. So they let the automated scripts or maybe AI assisted stuff do the first level of scans, to do the first level of reconnaissance, and then once it detects something, they come in and then they do the rest themselves manually. But you can use AI to write malware or maybe payloads. That is the one that has been the case. I recently saw someone, not recently, a while back, I saw someone post on Twitter a screenshot of. So basically, Amazon had this on their shopping website.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has this AI assistant, and people were asking it questions, and it would reply. The chatbot would reply, and people asked it to write malware, and it just wrote malware and gave the payload to as a response. So that is definitely there. Like there are ways you can use AI to write malware, and that is also fun because you now don't have to think. You can just like any other task, you just write the prompt and it gives you the malware, and you can edit it a little bit and use it. That's definitely there. But uh, being someone who is in the defensive side, I've seen AI used in defense, but I'm yet to see a lot of AI in actual real life scenarios. I'm still facing, and I have a limited sample size, so it might not be the case for everyone, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
yet to see a lot of AI in actual attacks. I'm sure they're using it in the back end to write malware or to build stuff and stuff, things like that. Not that it's not there. I'm sure it's being used heavily. But like when it comes to real targeted attacks, they are being done by humans.
I see. And do you think that that as AI agents become more popularized and as more tools become available to the public in regards to uh, that face of AI, that we're going to start to see more of those attacks? Because now you're going to have an agent that's able to actually execute, a series of actions instead of just having to constantly prompt. an LLM or whatever for code.
For sure. So I'm probably not the best guy to answer this because I'm not very deep in the AI cybersecurity stuff. And most of my experience with AI and cybersecurity is from the defensive side. But I'll definitely say yes. There's a strong because they're already using from what I've read. Yes, definitely they are already using AI a lot. From what I hear, I'm yet to face it in my personal experience.
Mm,
Talking about the future, for sure, as more agent AI stuff. I'm not sure how it's called. I think it's called Agent Tech AI. I'm not sure, but as that takes off, I was recently only a couple of days back speaking to a CISO on this. And I asked him, and he said he is looking forward to AI being used in his SOC. So SOC is a Security Operations Center. It's
mm,
where there's 24/7. There's people sitting there monitoring the alerts on any network. So they have firewalls, they have SIEM tools that monitor the entire network traffic. And if anything suspicious is happening, anything malicious is happening, it alerts, and the person then triages, which means he sits down, looks at the indicators, and then determines whether it's it has to be investigated or not. What he is expecting is there will be AI agents that can be installed on every laptop or in every endpoint, is what we call it. Its endpoint is basically where the network ends. So like a computer or a laptop or something like that, or a mobile phone. There will be AI agents installed on the network that will do the first level of incident response. Incident response is when a cybersecurity incident happens, like an attacker is detected or something, and the
mm,
first person that is an incident responder goes there and stops the contamination. It contains the infection. The CISO told me that he is looking forward to AI agents being used, deployed on every single endpoint on their network, and that's thousands of them on every single one of them that is capable of doing the first level of incident response, making sure cyber hygiene is practiced, and that if an incident is detected, it will be there. The AI agent will be the first and the fastest to respond because it's right there. It's not even on the network. It's on the
mm.
system itself, and it knows what to do. So it'll do the first level of incident response and then alert the right people who will then come in and take over manually. So that is something definitely to look forward to. I'm sure people have already built it. I'm pretty sure, but I'm yet to. I'll have to look that up. That's what he said is what he's looking forward to.
Yeah, that would certainly be a game changer to say the least. And just to kind of pivot here, does your company or have you ever interacted with like social engineering at any point? Do you guys do any work in regards to that? Because I mean, look, like the hacking is the data centers, laptops, cables, what have you. Like there's that actual the physical network, but in regards to like the social network stuff, do you encounter any of that in your line of work?
Oh, a lot of it. I mean, social engineering is the most fun thing to do in red teaming attacks, is because it's the easiest thing to exploit in any network as a human being. That's
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So social engineering is fun, and we see a lot of it not just from our side, defensive side, where we train people on how to detect social engineering attacks, but from the attackers as well. I mean, if you remember the Uber hack, where they hacked into the system, I mean, that was fun because the guy just spammed the MFA of the developer or the IT guy or whoever it was. And the guy who was just looking at his phone, seeing all these MFA alerts, after like lots of them, he just clicked on accept just to make it quiet. So you see social engineering happening in weird ways. I remember this one guy who was doing a red teaming for an insurance company. He he what he did was when he reached a location, he was supposed to get access to the Active Directory domain controller, and he wanted to get access to the second floor, but visitors are not allowed on the second floor. So he just started chatting with the receptionist, flirted with the receptionist a little bit, and then somehow had his ID card changed from visitor to the right, like the next level, which
Wow.
granted him access to the second floor, and he was able to do his job. So social engineering is still pretty prevalent, and even after so many awareness sessions, people still click on phishing emails. They still answer phone calls and give out some or the other information. I mean, we had this one guy show us this tool that we not my company, but this is where I used to work at previously. We demoed this to a CISO where we had this SIM spoofing solution. You could literally, so for example, let's say you saved my phone number.
Mm-hmm.
You would literally get a phone call from my phone number. It would be just my phone number, but when you answer it, on the other end is someone else. It's not me. I didn't even dial your number from my phone, but on your phone, your SIM card would literally think it is my phone number. Like there's no trick on the front end on your phone. It's not like I'm changing the contact name to my name of a different number and calling you from that number. No, it's
Yeah.
actually my phone number you're receiving the phone from, and then you use a deepfake audio to maybe uh, make the audio of the CFO. And now because you're a public company, the CFO has given so many interviews. I have enough samples of his voice to create a deepfake filter, and then I use his audio to authorize a payment of $100 million only. But I mean, just as an example. So we've used that advanced level of stuff as well, and it's pretty much out there. And there are certain companies who do just social engineering. I mean, they're such experts at it. There's a bunch of companies that are doing all they do is social engineering training and attacks. It's pretty cool because even after all there are so many companies that spend lots and lots of money on training employees, and they still fall for some kind of social engineering attack. So humans will always be, I think humans will always be the biggest weakness in a system. That's for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, and what you said about the voice there, I actually heard about a year ago or so. I don't know if you've seen this. This is probably like the fifth time that I'm bringing this video up, but it's just this is such a incredible video that I highly recommend everyone watch. It's from this organization called the Center for Humane Technology, and they had this talk regarding the AI dilemma. It's about an hour long. I highly recommend everyone go see it. But in it, at one point, they mention, and mind you, this is like a year ago, they said that all you needed was 10 seconds of someone's voice to completely emulate it so that it would
Oh wow.
be passable. And they said it a year ago. So now, from at least the last metric that I heard, you just need like 3 or 5 seconds now and it can completely just emulate
Yeah.
your voice, which is, I mean, absolutely terrifying. One of the guys that I actually interviewed, I think the guest before the last one, I think his name is Luke a lot. He said that he had actually created like a safe word between his closest friends and family, so that in the
Yep.
case that his voice got spoofed, they would have something as kind of like a fallback, which is, I mean, I never thought like that would be a good way to guard against it, but it totally makes sense. Like you just ask the whoever you think you're on the phone with for the safe word, and then as long as you keep that privately guarded to yourself, kind of like you see Inception, the movie.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, kind of like the totem. You know how they have that
Yep.
idea where like you don't show it to anyone. Um, I never thought that that would be a part of my life, but I'm actually seriously considering that. Like just telling my family members, not even over text, just in person. Hey, by the way,
Yeah.
this is if you ever need to verify, like this is what you need to say or this is what you need to ask me, because it's weird to say. I mean, it's weird to even just think about it, but I mean, it is absolutely a need. You anyone can be a target for this. It doesn't have to be anyone that's influential. It could just be someone that's like, hey, I know they probably have a couple thousand in their bank account I could take from them, or what have you. Or they can use you to get access to someone that's even more powerful or has more access to other more powerful people. It's just there's no way to predict, which way it'll go.
For sure. I mean, that's and that trick that you just talked about, it's becoming more and more prevalent. I mean, you hear people talking about that specific thing is have a safe word with your family members. You never know, because problem is, as these technologies become more accessible, like this deep fakes was a bit difficult a while ago to create. You need some resources, but as this becomes more open sourced, as this becomes more easily accessible and easy to train, it's like now people will use this for low stakes. But till
Mm-hmm.
now, it might have been intelligence agencies, but now these days, it would be just pretty much anybody who. So it becomes low stakes, which means now all of us are targets, potential targets. So you have to definitely look at this and see how you can secure yourself and your family. I mean, youngsters, they're pretty much aware about this stuff, but family members not much. Your parents, your grandparents, you need to have a word with them and show them what it's capable of, and make sure that they are well aware, they are a little bit paranoid, so that if this thing comes to fruition, you are there, like they know what to do. So it's definitely there. And this deepfake stuff has been pretty scary because I come across a lot of people who are worried about deepfakes, and there's just not much you can do about it. I mean, I had this. So one more thing that we do is cybersecurity protection for individuals. I've been doing that as a freelancer for here and there, not freelancer, but for free pretty much. A few people that I know,
Mm-hmm.
because the state I'm in, there's a lot of high net worth individuals, but they come from a real estate or maybe a manufacturing background, so they are not very tech savvy.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the cyber threats, they are a bit concerned. So they come to me sometimes and they ask, "What can we do?" And can you help us put some security measures in place? So this they often come with saying we are worried. Some politicians and stuff have come there saying, no, we are worried about deep fakes. And to be honest, if you are somebody who's a public figure and who does not have control over where their images go, I mean, there's just not much you can do about it. I mean, there's already interviews of you. There's video footage of you on the internet, hours and hours of it available. People can train stuff on it, and it's not that difficult to do it. If your audio and video is out there, people are going to use it. You just have to. So the best thing you can do is, if it's too late to restrict the amount of images or video footage you put out there, the best thing you can do is have a have an official account that has MFA and verified ID cards, and then make sure that you are a bit active on it, so that in case something goes wrong, you have a place to go and say, hey, my footage is circulating, this is not me. Just make sure you do not believe anything that you hear or see. That's pretty much the only thing that I've been able to come up with. There's not much you can do with this deep fake stuff other than the opposite to information. Like the best way to stop misinformation is through information. So that's pretty much the only thing I advise. Not because It's just because I don't have anything else for you. If you come to me with a deep fake concern, there's nothing I can do. It's pretty scary for me as well. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I even when I started the show, I had even considered like maybe even um having a like adding a voice filter or something to it, but even then I thought like, look, I can modulate my voice all I want. All it takes is one slip up. All I have to do, especially if I'm streaming, is reveal the wrong link or reveal the wrong login or the wrong password or what have you.
Yeah.
Um, and that's all it takes. Or even like maybe my streaming protocol isn't as secure. Maybe my antivirus needs like an update or something. There could be any number of things that could lead to the leak. So I mean, yeah, I think I would agree with you when you say that like really the only defense is just trying to leave as much of a genuine presence on your digital footprint to make sure that people can actually see what's fake and what's real. Like the amount of videos right now that are live streaming on YouTube that are like deep fakes of Elon Musk talking or whatever, and they're all just like all these Bitcoin
Yeah.
scams. I stumbled upon that side of the internet the other day. I was like, oh, this is actually like major. Like this is going on. There's like
Yep.
thousands of views here, and I guarantee you, it's not like at least just like as an assumption. I don't think it's a lot of people in North America sitting there being like, "Holy shit! Wow, Elon Musk is selling this Bitcoin. Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
he's giving it away." Like, I'm sure there's some of them, old folks and whatnot. Okay, but I would probably argue that like with people that aren't like living on the continent or they don't really see it pop up on their news as much. They just hear about this idea of Elon Musk as like this big magnate and they kind of have an idea of what Bitcoin is and that there's a lot of value to it. Um, and maybe they're just their life circumstances or whatever just aren't all that great. So when they see this video, they're like, "Oh my god, this is fucking awesome! I want to get in on this."
Yeah. Definitely. And no, it's interesting to see the patterns. I mean, so think of it as a scammer. What would you want to do? I would. So if you remember when Twitter was bought, like purchased by Elon, and there were these deep fakes about him firing people on a Zoom call. Yeah,
Hmm.
that went pretty viral. So it was just him firing people, and it was a deep fake. It was just a
I
funny video.
remember, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, those two guys, they were just totally playing a fucking meme on
yeah.
the news media about it. Yeah.
No, not even that. I'm talking about there was this like there's this Zoom call, like a company call where it's a deep fake of Elon Musk, and he's firing Twitter employees.
Oh.
It's pretty crazy, yeah. Firing, yeah, just yeah. I remember,
Oh.
yeah. See, look at that, 300,000 views. Pretty crazy.
Wow.
So what these people do is, if you look at it from a from the perspective of the people who would be doing this, is they see the search trends on Google and see what's trending, and that's
Mm.
what they attack. That's where they go. There was this one thing that there's this guy named Ranveer, who is like Joe Rogan level podcaster of India. His channel name is The Beer Biceps, I think, something like that. I haven't watched a lot of it, but I know who is the beer BEER biceps. Yeah, yeah, that's
He's the Joe Rogan of India. Interesting.
yeah, pretty like a big podcaster basically. And his channel was some time back compromised, and it was just Elon Musk Bitcoin stuff, like Tesla,
Mm.
Bitcoin, something like that. Like his whole channel was gone, and it was just a live of somebody streaming Bitcoin scam stuff.
Wow.
So that was crazy because he has millions of people watching it. So that was quite crazy to watch. Like even
Interesting.
some of the biggest names could have their account hacked and stuff like this. So
Oh yeah,
it's
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's a wave every now and then where like a bunch of these social accounts of like celebrities and whatnot get hacked, and then that's when like when all the shit coins started getting pushed by them, people were like, "Oh, they got hacked." I was like, "Nope, nope, they're actually
Yep.
real. This time they actually mean it. This time they actually are the celebrity making a shit coin." But I mean, how can you
I mean,
tell?
yeah, go to my LinkedIn. I'll show you something. Uh, Go on. Are you logged in? I don't wait, but if you're logged in, I don't want you to dox yourself.
Yeah,
Let me just send you one.
let me double check my
You probably won't
LinkedIn.
be able to. Yeah, wait. I'll just send you the photograph that I wanted because
Sure,
probably
sure.
won't be able to view my profile unless you're. Or maybe do just one thing. Go to my Twitter profile picture. It's so that profile picture that you see,
Yep.
yeah, that's AI generated. It's not me. I am yet to post a
Ah,
photograph of myself on the internet. So
smart.
what I did was, yeah, and I wouldn't show my eyes also. It's a way to beat facial recognition. That's why I have a cursor crown, and the eyes are like blurred out. So
Mm.
on LinkedIn, I needed some professional photographs for my LinkedIn, but I was never going to put my face on there. So I just generated AI pictures, and then I took the closest family and relatives and showed them these photos and said, "Is when do you think I took that?" And I'm like, "Oh, maybe a week ago. When did you get a photo shoot done?" Like, "Yep, good enough." And then I just posted them on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I still haven't posted a single photograph of myself. I'm hoping this year I'll get a bit more lenient about it. But I've been very paranoid.
I mean, look, like I started off the podcast asking you about your fears. I could understand, man. Even from what little I know about cybersecurity, the amount of vulnerabilities that exist at every single corner and the untold damage that someone could wreak with even just bits of metadata on you. I mean, all it takes is just one person that's upset and you just happen to land in their crosshairs. You don't even have to be like anyone special. I mean, like how many attacks have happened just because people go to Starbucks and they tap into the public Wi-Fi and there's just one guy sitting in the corner with his laptop and is like, "Oh, great, yet another victim." Like
Yeah, true. And I mean, it's definitely there. And what happens is these data leaks that happen. I mean, you don't even need to be targeted. Like, it's not
mhm.
that an attacker is looking to scam you or hurt you. It's just you just happen to have a bad luck where the site you logged into and the password you used on that site got leaked. So most of these compromises they happen this way. What happens
Mhm.
is you log into one site, you give them an email address and a password, and then this is why cybersecurity professionals keep telling you to use different passwords and MFA. Let's say you logged into whatever website, and then that website had a data leak, and you use the same email ID and password on your net banking. Now the attacker is going. What is going to do is there's only so many banks in a country. Once he gets hands on your email and password, he's going to spam that in every single net banking. In one
Mhm.
of them, he's going to be able to log in because you sort of different passwords. That's how most of these attacks happens. Your data is leaked somewhere. They use that to infiltrate into something else.
Yeah, and you could just simply like dragnet the top 10 or 20 visited websites of that country and just enter
Yeah,
that login and be like, okay, well, all right, maybe I got a bank, maybe I got like a gym membership, maybe I got this, maybe I got that. And then at the end of the day, you just corroborate all that data into a single identity. And you're like, okay, all right, there's all these different vectors of attack. Let's see what's actually useful. Um, and that's just one person. Like what happens
yeah,
when you're able
exactly.
to do that with an entire like spreadsheet of passwords and usernames? I mean, there is no end to that. That's why like when I transitioned my email, I as I was looking through my inbox, I was like, "Oh shit, there's like a ton of emails that I have like subscribed to or that I've had memberships with or like just accounts that I've made in the past that like I don't use at all anymore, for one reason or another."
Yeah,
And it made me realize like, "Oh shit, my digital footprint is actually pretty long and extensive. I need to delete this." So for every single one, I I made a request to the company. Some of them like I had to go to like a third party that actually manages the servers, but then because they're in a different
yep.
countries, there's different laws, so you actually have to email like just all this convoluted shit. But I tried to be as clean with it as possible because I was like, yeah, I don't want this data to just be lying around so that one day when they have to downsize their IT team and AI just becomes so good that it just cracks everything open like a walnut. Like I don't
Yep.
want my shit to get, caught up in this dragnet. Like that's ridiculous. Like yeah, so I just wrote all these emails and I was like, man, there should be a service for this. There should be an app or something where you can like use a one-time purchase and it scans your entire email, keeps the data locally, on your device, and it lets you know, hey, by the way, you got a list of like 100 or whatever accounts that you don't use or you haven't used for months. Here's an automated email that we can send or an automated request. Like that would be a hella useful tool.
There are services that help you erase your digital footprint. So that is there. Um, I've never used one though, but what they do is they reach out to these companies on your behalf and they help you detect all the digital presence that you have and then one by one get rid of it. There are
Mm,
services out there, but not exactly like what you're talking about. But yeah, that would be pretty cool to have. I mean, I've also done exactly what you're talking about, and it's a lot of work. And it's not just you
mm-hmm.
sit down once and maybe for 4, 5, 6 hours and do it. They respond to an email and then you have to send fill
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
form or do that, or some accounts you don't even remember the password and you didn't have MFA, so now you have to reach out to Google, like Gmail support or something. So it takes months to actually get rid of every single digital footprint that you have. So it's pretty expensive, and this coming from someone like you who is very tech savvy. What about the people, there's millions and millions of people who just don't know at all what is happening. And like what I say to people is, if you receive like a scammer's phone call or an SMS, think about where could he have gotten that data.
Mm-hmm.
This would obviously be after you have fixed your digital presence, but there has to be somewhere that they got the data right. That's the crazy part is you just don't know how many places you've given your primary phone number or your primary email, and that got leaked so many times, which is where this really helpful site like Have I Been Pwned and intelx.io and all these come in place. Like look this one up, intelx.io. It's crazy because you can literally see passwords. Like, intelx.io, it's it's um it's a free service to just look up, but if you want to see the actual dark web leaks, you need to pay for a subscription. Like if you search in any phone number or email address, it'll just show. Like if you look up have I been born, it tells you in which data leak it was leaked, but that's pretty much all it tells you. But
Yeah.
this intelx.io, it gives you the actual data on what exactly is inside that leak, so it will literally show you your password, show you a leaked password. You need to have a subscription for that. It's a
Mm-hmm.
bit expensive, I think. I don't remember because I've not purchased it. I've used it through my employers for our clients. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So like it literally show you the password or the hash of the password or whatever was leaked basically.
Yeah, I think my VPN is preventing it from entering that site, but I'm definitely gonna write that down and make sure I
Yeah,
check
I'm
that out.
sure you'll at least find your address because there's been food delivery services and grocery delivery services. I see that all the time. Have people's literal real address leaked. Just search their phone number or their email address and you'll be able to find their address. Pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was even just thinking like growing up with an education system that like where computer literacy is a part of what you're learning. On occasion, a teacher will be like, "Oh, hey, by the way, we're going to use this free online web-based platform to like make some stupid animation or what have
Yeah,
you, right? Like post a project, make a presentation, whatever." And they're like, "Oh, you just have to use it one time, so it's fine." So yeah, naturally, you only have one email. You're a kid. You're not really thinking about anything. You sign up for it, and then 10, 20, 30 years down the line, maybe you're using the same email. And maybe that company has gone bankrupt or their assets have been sold off or they just exist in a country where the laws are not as stringent. Because just because you can access it from North America doesn't mean the company is centered there. Any number of things can go wrong. And then, hey, by the way,
yep,
there's your first and last name, maybe your address, maybe your phone number, um, at least the IP address of where you made the account. Like, just all these little bits of data that could easily be abused by somebody that knows what they're doing, and there is no shortage of those people.
yeah, definitely. And hey, I'm from India. I mean, talk about scammers, yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask, what what is your take on that? Because to me, the way that I see it is, look, if I lived in a country like that, where I would assume, not knowing much about India, but I would assume that unless you live near an urban center or uh, are adjacent to it, that finding work that is like at least comfortable in the sense that you have an office to go to, or um there's like an expectation regarding like, oh, this is actually like long term employment that I can look forward to, a company that I can invest years into, or at least like a couple of years, that like job security. Out elsewhere, it's not nearly as stable. So what some people would do is they turn to these industries where, you know, not a lot of oversight. I would imagine that,
Yep.
the government wouldn't really um necessarily like target them and go after them senselessly. Like, I'm sure that when they do shut these places down, as they obviously have police forces in India, obviously. So I'm sure that some of these places are getting shut down, but that there's kind of like a permissiveness to it. Like, what is it that you've seen?
So, um, and this is interesting because I've helped shut a few of them down. Uh, I'll tell you a brief background. So earlier, what it used to be, and it's not like people have very distorted image of India if they've not been here. So we used to be, or I think we still are, primarily an agrarian country. There's a lot of agriculture. We are some of the top exporters of certain grains and cereals.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely an agrarian country, and the youth is. There are urban centers. I live in a city, and people come to urban cities to find employment, and they do find employment. And there's all kinds of industries that are booming here. It's not like every other person is an IT support guy, like the stereotypical IT tech guy, or
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of tech, obviously, but it's not like every other guy is working at a scam or a call center or something. But it's an image, and rightfully so. I mean, there have been a lot of cases, so I understand why that image has built up. It's for sure. So what happened is earlier, probably 10 or approximately 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago or so. Yeah, these start when this call centers started taking place, and then after a while, once it took off, what people used to, and people made a lot of money. The bad guys, let's put it that way, they
Mm-hmm.
made a shit ton of money out of this because they scammed old people, they scammed the vulnerable, and then they would make so much money out of it. They'd be buying Porsche and Lamborghinis and stuff, like that level of money, like Range Rovers and stuff. So it was good business, and which means if you have access to money, that means you can bribe people, which is what used to happen till up until very recently. They just bribed off the local police. So even if the top level government just put out a directive, hey, uh, take these people off. Yeah, I'd be interested to see those figures. Oh, wow,
10
10.2
billion.
billion. That's pretty cool. Yeah,
Wow.
that's pretty cool, isn't it? So imagine running a call center. That's good money and no taxes. So what used to happen is this. So they would make so much money, they can afford to pay off pretty much anybody they want, which means it would never reach the higher governments. And it's like this. So if in a country where corruption is so mainstream, If you want to put out an image, this is not just scam centers. For example, where I'm at, uh, alcohol is banned. It's illegal to procure alcohol or sell alcohol, but
Hmm.
people still get their hands on it illegally. Right now, let's say you bribe the local police and you're selling alcohol, and now your top level government or top level police officials or commissioner or whoever puts out a directive saying, hey, I want these places raided and I want to see some action on this and curb this illegal stuff that is happening. What you do is the people who are bribing, if you are a police guy, what you do is the people who are bribing you, you tell them, hey, we are going to do a raid on this place. Make sure you're not there. Leave out some alcohol so we can make a big deal out of it in front of the press. And then after a while, we'll nip it under the bud. Similarly, you could just bribe the right people and make it look like these scam centers got closed and so many assets were seized, but it's just 5% of what you were making. And you open three more and you're thriving. This used to be the case up until recently when this where government started being involved, foreign ministries started getting involved. YouTubers played a big role. I'm very thankful to those guys like Kid Boga, and there's this one guy named
Hmm.
Jim Browning. It's probably not his real name, but he's an excellent guy because he's a hacker himself, and he reverse shells into. So basically, he hacks into the CCTV cameras of these scam centers and
Oh
surprises
yeah.
the scammers. It's fun to watch. So what happened was, since Jim Browning is the name, JIM
Yeah,
Browning.
no,
Yeah.
I've seen his
He's a
videos.
really
He's
cool guy.
yeah, great. I love his
Uh,
content.
I love watching him. So what he does, once these YouTubers started becoming mainstream and people started watching these, the government became more involved and they realized that it's not the raids that are happening are not actually working, and that's when they actually started taking serious action and getting involved so that the low level guys who were being paid off, they didn't have a part to play. They were just sidelined, and the agency started getting involved and started cramming down on these guys.
Hmm.
Not that it's all gone; it's definitely still there. But the more and more awareness, like the more awareness that happens, the better it will be. More action will be taken. So I'm very much happy because the YouTubers, believe it or not, played the biggest part in this. They were the people who brought all the awareness, and because even as a local, there's only so much I can do as a citizen. If you have paid the right people off, there's not much I can do. But because this became an international issue, that's what gave the real leverage, and that's when the authorities started getting involved, and now it's cramming down. It's not as bad here where I live. There are other cities and other states where this is much more predominant. Here it's not that much. It's definitely still there, and we're still working on it, but I'm pretty sure this will, with time, this will get better. I hope we lose that image of a place where it's just tech support scams.
Yeah, it's certainly one of the few things that that India is notorious for, and it's good to hear that at least from what you've seen that there is a move being made to kind of to tamp down on this stuff. I would imagine it's extremely difficult. I mean, even the few times that I've visited Russia, seeing that level of corruption so openly on display, and even with just like little things, I don't recall ever interacting with like the hacker scene there or anything like that. But even like stuff like um, getting inside a train station for cheap, like there were cops that were like standing outside selling tickets, and it just I saw it as a teenager, and I was like, this is what the fuck, like nobody does this in Canada. This is hella weird. What the hell? This is just like the standard. And if those guys can do it at that level, then that just makes me think like, okay, well, what else is like happening across this nation where
Hmm.
if this is like just the bare minimum that I can expect. And I would imagine that in a lot of ways, India kind of faces similar issues because, I mean, first of all, how the fuck do you even police that many people, and how do you keep the people that are policing those people accountable because there's just so many of them, especially if there is more to be made uh, from taking advantage of people in ways that doesn't really like cost them a lot. As you said, like, oh, I got one center shut down, we'll just set up another one or three more or four
Yeah.
more or what have you. That doesn't it doesn't surprise me that something like that would happen because I mean, as you said, if the economy is like mostly based on agrarian exports, and the IT scene is like developing and becoming a bigger part, but as you said, it's not as if every second person you meet is going to be an IT tech. Uh, if those opportunities are scarce, and it's also really, really difficult to get into the government sector, yeah, if I grew up in India, I probably would have worked for one of those centers too. You know, like why not? I mean, the amount of money they make, I'd imagine, like, especially from what I've heard about Indian kids growing up, they kind of share um, that experience from their parents regarding like the tiger parenting mentality, where it's like very intense, focused on school, doing well, getting the right job, like succeeding in a career. It's very, very structured, very rigid. If you're able to completely surpass all that and be like, yeah, guess what? I'm making twice what my brother's making, or I'm making twice better than what my neighbor's making, like that's a pretty damn good incentive.
Yeah, it really is. And mm, because you talked about policing, I'll tell you one thing. I have a lot of people in my family who are in law enforcement. One of my close relatives, he is a police officer of sorts. Let's say he's one of the
Hmm.
officers at a law enforcement agency. And so India became independent in 1947, and so I don't remember the exact numbers, but a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, I was talking to him. Maybe 4 or 5 years ago, this was. I was talking to him about the situation of the law enforcement and what kind of stress they go through and how many hours they have to work and for how little pay compared to what they would make if they were in corporate.
Hmm.
And what he told me is, and he talked to me, he gave me some numbers on what is an ideal ratio of population density to police or population to police. And the ideal ratio, what it is right now, is would have been okay for 1947, meaning 5 or 6 years ago, we reached the number of policemen to citizens that we should have in 1947. Just imagine that. Like the number of people, the number of policemen we have right now is enough to police people, the population that India had in 1947.
Wow.
So imagine how many more policemen we need, like to be able to actually successfully do their work right now. That's why corruption is a big deal. That's why stress is a big deal. It's because they are overworked and they are handling so much stuff that they're not able to, imagine. Um, you have 5 cases today to work on. One is someone from America has sent in an email saying, "Hey, my grandmother was scammed out of $600 by a scammer who seems to be living somewhere in your state, not even your jurisdiction, somewhere in your state."
Hmm.
And versus you have like 6 murders pending to be solved. Like obviously that's not going to be on your priority list. So it's definitely a serious, like a complex issue to deal with. They're getting there slowly.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start with something like that. I mean, just with with the sheer amount of people alone, like you guys aren't exactly a surveillance state like England is. Like they have the highest density of security cameras out of any other nation on the planet. They probably even
Yeah.
rival China. Um, I mean, having that kind of infrastructure alone, even if you had that kind of infrastructure, that still would require so many people to parse through that data. And even if you left it up to AI, that still doesn't change the fact that like it's all this work that has to be done. And how can you possibly manage something like that with so many people? I mean, it's almost impossible to think about. Um,
Yeah,
but I'm
and
glad to,
and
yeah.
adding to that, I mean, just think about the brain drain we have. Because if you have, see, there's a bubble. So if you are rich, you live in a bubble, and if you're not rich, you do not live in a bubble, and you're out there with everybody else. Which is why you see the intelligent people leave for US or Canada or some other country and go
Mm-hmm.
there and study. Now with new immigration laws in US, I am hoping that instead of choosing a different country like Canada, or if Canada gets strict, maybe Australia or Japan or something, I hope that we curb the brain drain and we incentivize the right things in India, so that these problem solvers, these potential entrepreneurs that are going and leading companies like Microsoft, instead choose to build a Microsoft in India. That would, because it's on both ends. On one hand, you have lots of problems, and on the other hand, you are losing problem solvers to different countries. So that is a big challenge. If you are able to figure out a way to keep them here, you'd probably see problems get solved faster, because it's not like countries have not been resilient. I mean, there are so many countries that have been oppressed for years, for decades and centuries, and then bounced back pretty fast and grown pretty fast. So it's not like you cannot do it. It's just you have to incentivize the right things and build the right culture. So that's the hope with these stricter immigration laws in other countries. It's the right chance for the government in India to incentivize good, like the right things, and keep the people here now.
That is very interesting that you mentioned that, because this idea of brain drain, we're seeing a lot of that in Canada too. And, even that aside, I had never considered that would be enough of a problem uh, that needs to be dealt with, because, like, it's as you said, it's like, well, if those companies are getting developed, maybe not even built, but they're just going over to work on them elsewhere in, whichever country, then that effort is not being put into the actual homeland, and it's not really improving conditions, because people just, they get to a certain level, they, make whatever they have to for a visa. And
Yeah.
at least here in Canada, the way that we've seen it is they just pay the college, which ends up being a scam. um and I don't know to what extent, the people going into it know that it's a scam. I would imagine a good chunk of them do. um but regardless, they end up coming here, then, they do whatever work to get by, and then they don't put that effort into that, which causes a problem. I never considered that. Wow, that's I mean, it totally makes sense. It's like I said, it's what's happening here in Canada, where we have this one city, Waterloo, where they have one of the top, if not the top, engineering university of all of Canada. um, and a lot of the graduates from their programs, computer science, engineering, anything to do with that, they just go to SF. They go to San Francisco, because they get paid like 4, 5, 10, 15, 20 times more than they would here in Canada.
So yeah, I mean, if you guys are facing that, imagine what kind of situation we are in. And yeah, Waterloo. I've heard a lot about Waterloo, by the way. I mean, I've heard that they're probably the smartest engineer, some of the smartest engineers in the world, especially in computer science. Are from
Hmm.
they've studied from Waterloo, and there's some great stuff that has been built out of there. I also
Yeah.
saw this one guy on Twitter who probably built like a small. I think what was it? I think it was something nuclear that he built by studying using Claude. So that was fun to watch. This was some time back on Twitter. This guy posted about how he used Claude to study nuclear physics or something and built a small nuclear reactor, if I'm not wrong. That was crazy. I think he was from Waterloo, the university that you're talking about, if I'm not wrong.
No, I know the exact guy you're talking about. I'm actually hopefully I get my Twitter account back in time, because I'm trying to get him on the podcast. Yeah,
Nice.
I saw his post months ago where he did that. And I mean, I look, I've heard of this, something similar to this happening back in, I believe it was the 60s or 70s. This high school kid had been assigned a science project, and he decided to just crank it up to 20, and he built like an actual, like, working nuclear reactor that could actually, like, exert energy in his backyard. uh and it was to the point where, like, the FBI had to pay him a visit, and they're like, look, like, we love what you're doing, we love this American spirit, and we hope that you work for, some, like, you know Department of Defense or whatever the fuck
Yeah.
contractor, but we got to shut this shit down, because there's no way that we are
It's
letting anyone
crazy.
have this tech. uh, yeah, he built it all in his backyard. I don't know where he is now, but yeah, no, I saw that post, and I mean, man, seeing stuff like that, my words fail me, because I don't even know where
Yeah.
you would even start with a project like that, let alone, like, I saw parts of the build, they had it, like, stacked on cereal boxes or some shit. I was like, what the like, what the actual fuck, man? This doesn't make any sense. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's crazy, and like this is why every day I wake up, I'm grateful for having the internet, because everything I've learned, none of it was from college. Every single thing was from internet and a laptop and an internet. That's all I've like. The first time I had access to a smartphone, I have this cousin who is studying a PhD in the US. He did his masters and his PhD in US. He's still studying there. When I was pretty young, he brought me an iPhone 5C when he came to visit. When he first went there, after a year, he came back to visit his family, and he brought an iPhone 5C, a blue colored iPhone 5C. It's like this very small
Oh, yeah.
device.
I remember these.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this was my first actual smartphone, and I read probably hundreds of books on these. I read Harry Potter from cover to cover, from first to the last book, all seven books on
Hmm.
that small screen. Like I was probably 15 or 16 when I got that phone, and then I started reading books on there. I read like hundreds and hundreds of books on that small screen. Like the amount of leverage you get from just the internet and a laptop. Like you don't even need to go to college these days. You can do freelancing. You can build your entire career with just a laptop and internet. That's all you need. You do not need anything else. Just just laptop and internet. And that's how I've learned stuff, and that's how the next generation is learning stuff. And you don't even need to pay for any courses. There's enough materials for free out there. And the worst case scenario, if you want to learn something that is very niche, just get books, like get PDF versions of books. You can get them. I know piracy is bad, but like god damn it, like you can just get any book you want for free, like any reference book, any tech book, any, like you want to develop the latest malware, you can get your hands on malware analysis books for free. You want to learn rocket science, go download research papers, go download the books and learn it. Like you can do pretty much anything these days.
Yeah, no, your only limit is really your imagination.
Yeah.
Um, and speaking on Waterloo, what the other just to kind of bridge your point, I don't know if you've heard, but they have this get together called Socratica, where it's kind of like these co-working sessions that they hold, and
Mm.
they started out in Waterloo, but have now they've gone global. They have a couple in that happen in South American countries. They have a couple that happen in Europe. They're still kind of developing and building it. I think it's only been out for not even like 4 or 5 years. I think it just started like during COVID, and it's essentially where like all these different people get together. They're builders, developers, designers. Everyone just kind of comes from different backgrounds, and once a year they do um, they do a live demo day. Let me see if I can find the footage from last year's. Yeah, so they do
Oh,
these
nice.
symposiums where they do these demos, and to kind of bridge your point where you were saying about like the kind of resources, there are now spaces being built up like this everywhere. I'm pretty sure they actually even had one in Bangalore, in India
Okay.
recently. So they're really branching out, and these things are just like it's just a student initiative. They just got together. They wanted to create a space for builders, and they made it happen. Socratica is not the only one. I'm sure there's plenty that I haven't heard of that just haven't, made it to the scene yet. But there's people that are just getting together with other independent builders and just making cool shit. And that's like how I stumbled upon, the teapot. Because in Toronto, the city where I'm from, um,
Mm.
there is a space that's being built in a couple of different areas of the city, of just like this, people hosting lectures, people hosting design nights where they showcase their latest product and the story and everything that came before it. And there's investors that like actually show up to these things, so it's not just like some kind of masturbatory like look at me, look at what I did, but there is actual like legitimate networking that happens. People get together, they make deals happen. It's like an organic um extension of what happens on the internet, except now you can actually do it in person. And it was only the moment when I started attending more of these spaces and talking to these people that I realized, oh, like I I need to build something. I desperately need to make something because the job that I have isn't fulfilling. Uh, the future that I
Right.
was promised with my degree isn't working out. Uh, I need to just do something and go out on my own and make my own path. And I'm so thankful for spaces like this, and for opportunities to have to speak with people like you, because otherwise I don't know what I'd be doing with my life. It would just feel a lot more meaningless.
I mean, same thing. If I hadn't stumbled upon this space, I'd probably just be working a job. I mean, it's reading about these people and looking at their interactions that I thought maybe I could be doing a job for the rest of my life, or I could just start stuff on my own and have some small clients. And now is the time to take some risks. And with this level of ecosystem that is out there, where people are just building stuff on the side and it's taking off, like you never know what can if you be optimistic and if you just keep consistently working and putting stuff out there, you just never know what's going to work out. And I've met a bunch of people through the internet that have helped me on my journey. I've made some pretty amazing connections that I just would never have made working a job, or just you know not being a part of these communities online.
Hmm.
And watching people build stuff, just watching them build stuff gives you so much inspiration. And even if I don't consider myself someone who's like extremely smart, like one of these, like so many of these people who are like math geniuses and all that. I'm just a regular guy, but watching people do this kind of crazy stuff gives you a push to learn more, to be better. I mean, I would never have been reading research papers, let alone know what arxiv.org is, unless I was part of this community. Like, just that put me in, like, gave me so much advantage, even though I'm like miles behind these genius people. It just has given me such an advantage in my day-to-day life, where, like, if it's like this, if you stay among the best of the best, when you go out into the world, you realize that not everybody is like the crazy smart people. It's just
Hmm.
regular everyday people like me. And if I spend my time with these geniuses, it's just going to give me that 1% edge in my daily life. That's going to give me the best chance at succeeding at whatever it is I'm doing. It's like it's like the higher you aim, like shoot for the moon, you might hit the stars kind of thing. So that has happened for me, and pretty stoked about it. I'm pretty excited. I've never been this much optimistic about the future.
That's awesome, man. I'm really glad to hear that because this is a sentiment that I've gotten from just about every other person that I've interviewed. Um, that like despite whatever's going on in the news or in their personal lives, there's still this kind of underlying sense of optimism behind it all because every day it's like there's a new possibility that you could learn something or meet someone or interact with something that just you never know where it could lead. And the spirit of building, um, I'm really glad to see it in, and like I said, a lot of people that have interviewed in yourself as well, because ultimately the issues that we face and the problems that we have going forward, we can't rely on the systems of old to fix them. We need something absolutely new to shake things up and to build these new tools and new systems and levels of understanding of all these issues. Because like mainstream media is not going to support us through this. It's going to be cracked ex journalists that are on the ground taking videos, writing long form essays, or even just shit posting that is going to inform the world. And it's not going to be some uh, major corporate player in cybersecurity that's going to make the waves. Not always necessarily, but it could just be the little
Yeah.
guy that has that edge because they use an LLM in a really unique way or what have you, right? Like it's just these new systems. They're so much more tactile. They're so much more flexible that I mean, people are iterating every minute of every hour of every day, 24/7, and it's all just happening around the globe. Like all this stuff recently about how OpenAI has been um, upended by the Chinese LLM.
Yeah.
I love seeing shit like that. I love that. Like that's great. OpenAI should not be on a pedestal. They should not be the end all be all. There should absolutely
Yeah,
be
true.
open source competitors that are fucking shit up. And whether we like it or not, like yeah, that's the world we live in. Because guess what? There's a bunch of people in China right now, probably at gunpoint, being forced to work
Mhm.
in the fucking in the chip mines, trying to make sure that their LLM is the best one. And yeah,
Yeah.
we need to live in that kind of world and not kind of wait for solutions to happen. We absolutely need more of that kind of competition. I love to see it, even though like a lot of people are pissed off, like oh, so many people giving
Mm.
their data to China. It's like yeah, that's the world we live in, man. And like millions of people use TikTok, so like what are we gonna do about it?
Yeah, like, were we not giving it already? That's the question. I mean, do you think we were not giving it already? And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And to imagine that, like, a random 23-year-old in India can spin up an instance of like DeepSeek on my laptop, like locally, and just like build stuff with it. I don't even need to pay for anything. It's still, I'm still to come to terms with the level of ability I have with all these technological innovations. Like, I could have never imagined growing up. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I'd be doing or be able to do. It's crazy. I mean, I'm like you said, I'm also at a loss of words with all this crazy stuff that's happening. And yes, talking about open source, I mean, I work in an industry that was built on open source, and that's what we
Mm-hmm.
thrive on, is making sure everybody has access to everything. Like, and it's fun to watch like the big Goliaths of the industry or of the tech world, stay on their toes because they have like some people like some quants in China who are just building a side project, and it turns out they can beat your billions of dollars that you spent to build a chat GPT. It's fun to watch, like you said, and it's pretty interesting.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, no, I always love seeing those stories where like just either like just big giant dominant forces or corporate like companies that have been around forever get just complete like just get their shit pushed in by some crack teenager or like just anybody with enough determination. Like my the initial exposure that I had to this was when Yassine when he built Dingboard. Do you know that website?
Yeah. Yep. I've used
Yeah,
it a lot.
yeah, and when I first started using it, I was like, "Oh, like this is a funny meme maker, ha ha ha!" I can make like some really funny memes. And then once the AI tools became like so much better, I was like, "Oh shit,
Yep.
this is like, I mean, it's missing a couple of tools, but you could like easily whip up a web-based like Photoshop that has AI and costs you a fraction of what Adobe Photoshop costs. Like even FrogForge is much closer to Photoshop than Dingboard is, and that's just like a tool that anyone can use and doesn't need like a. Oh my god, Adobe subscription prices are like hundreds of dollars
Yeah,
a month.
through the roof. Yeah.
Oh my god, so fucking insane. And it's not it's gate kept by this like all the software, you have to have an account, you have to no, fuck that. Some dude got sponsored
Yeah.
by another dude on Twitter and then they decided to make this app
Yeah.
and now they're like completely upending it.
Yeah. And and I'm using it to post memes on LinkedIn. By the way, I'm putting rarepeppers.net on LinkedIn, where
Yeah.
people in suit and tie are just liking that shit. Crazy.
Yeah. No, it's just a sign of the times that we live in where I mean, hell, podcasters are now becoming the newscasters. Like Elon Musk said, we are the media. Uh, Now there's the chance for the quote unquote little guy to like make a global impact unlike anything before is it's unprecedented. Like we don't know what to do with ourselves. Like every day that I see a new AI advancement, it keeps sinking in this like sobering reminder of like, oh, you're really stupid. Like you have no like comprehension of how to use these tools or how to use these hacks. And I'm fine with that. I've made my peace with that. Like I never did well in math or engineering or science. Like that's not my wheelhouse. But I like that some people are working on like simplifying stuff like that. So they're like, hey, by the way, you could use an LLM for this, or you could use that, or you could use this. Um, Even though I know that I'm stupid and I don't like understand it to the same level that some experts do, that's fine. I could still like find plenty of use for this technology in my own personal life that allows me to leverage my capabilities by 10x, 100x, what have you.
Yeah, all you need is like an open mind. Like you, instead of buying into the BS that you hear all the time, it's like AI is going to take your job. Instead of buying into that, all you need is an open mind and some time to study. Like, okay, this is how I can use Chat GPT, and this is how I can make my job easier using this, and maybe spend my time doing something more productive. And just, if you have that open mind, the engineers who have built this, they have made it a point to make sure that is user friendly. It is
Mm-hmm.
accessible by like pretty much anyone. Like, I can probably like turn up Chat GPT into voice mode and put it in the kitchen, and my mom can probably talk to it through a recipe as she's cooking. I mean, it's that level of user friendliness is there. I mean, so what else do you want? All you need to have is an open mind and some time, and be willing to learn. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and speaking of AI, I asked this of just about everyone that I've interviewed, and I understand that like making predictions is nearly impossible in that space, just because of how fast things move. But just from everything that you've seen, um, not only in your work but just in general in the AI world, um, where do you think it like we're kind of headed like into, especially with all the recent stuff with the China, what is it, deep stroke, what is it, I forget the name of the
Deep
AI
Seek.
that they, deep
Yeah,
seek,
Deep Seek.
right? Yeah, yeah. But yeah, what do you make
So
of the
a
scene and where
couple
it's
of
headed?
a couple of disclaimers. Though. I am not someone who understands AI and machine learning that well. I was never good at math. I don't understand the workings of like I know what an LLM is. I know how it works, but I'm not someone who can build AI stuff. I'm just in like think of me as an everyday user of AI. But
Mm-hmm.
the one thing that I would definitely say is how they talk about AGI and ASI and all these stuff. I don't think there will ever come a time where it like literally takes over Terminator style. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that is ever going to happen. That's one. Like it's never going to happen that all these armies that are using robo dogs to enhance their warfare capabilities. I don't think there will ever be a time where an automated tank will show up on the street that I live in and like announce from its microphone PA system that hey, we are your AI overlords and now we have taken over. I don't think that is happening. Now, if you are concerned about maybe AI taking over so badly that people are not able to find employment, sure, it is one of the many possibilities. But even then, like it's the same tractor thing where tractors came out and farmers were worried. Well, they still have a job. It's not like farming is out. So I don't think that will be the case. Like everybody's out of a job and now we have to figure out what we are doing with ourselves. And nor will it be the case like AI has taken over in a sense that we are now subservient and they are like a ruling race. Like that's never going to happen in my opinion. At least not in like the next 1,000 or 5,000 years, unless we figure out a way to make AI sentient. Which I'm sorry, call me a doomer if you want, but I don't think that is possible to make a life because you have to have certain spiritual beliefs. Obviously, when you get into this zone of things where
Mm-hmm.
you believe that there's something called a soul and there is something that is called life, and that a robot does not have life. You can make it simulate emotions maybe, but it's still an algorithm. It's still a robot. It's still chips and electricity. It's not life. You can make it as close you want to life, but it's not going to become a life. You can create maybe body parts. You can create a full simulated body, but it's not going to become life, and it's not going to take over. That's my prediction. And if I'm wrong, well, so be it. I hope India gets lenient gun rights so that if do AI overlords do take over, I'm going to die fighting with machine guns in my hand. But yeah, so that's definitely there. That's one prediction I can make very easily because I strongly believe that. And the second thing is, I think we are still very early on. We are just getting started, and we have a long way to go. And there's some crazy stuff that's going to happen. And I think healthcare is going to get so much better with more and more countries investing into AI. Like you heard about Stargate project, they're putting
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
$500 billion, and I don't know how real that is because Elon Musk was talking like, "Hey, this is BS." I'm not sure what's going to happen out of it, but I think healthcare is going to get much better because my sister's a doctor. I have a few doctors that I know, and the level of things that AI will be able to do with healthcare is going to be crazy. Tech is definitely already getting revolutionized. It's already reaching levels where the mainstream people are not aware about it. Once that gets into mainstream, I'm just glad I have a front row seat to all this revolution that's happening. I think healthcare is something I'm looking at that's going to get fun. I want to see if allergies get solved. Like some people are just I'm also born with allergies, like just born with it. I want to see some crazy things that we never thought were possible get solved with AI. And circling back to the same point, I don't think AI is going to like overtake. So that's my prediction.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as predictions go, that's something that I think that a lot of people could agree with, especially in regard to the spirituality stuff. Because I mean, look, the way that I see it, and obviously, disclaimer, I'm not an expert in any of these fields, but if we don't even understand the not the evolutionary purpose, but like just what dreaming does to the brain and exactly why we do that, or the fact that we still don't comprehend certain things about the human body, it gives me pause. Because I mean, look, if we haven't even considered that, and we're thinking of like AGI in the next 5-10 years, I don't know. I'm very skeptical. Also, especially because um, it's it's one thing for an LLM or something to build an idea, but there is something about the way that human beings get ideas that is just so organic and I would argue impossible to mimic because whenever like you have an idea, you become the conduit for something, at least from the way that I understand it. It's all based on your past experiences, your dreams, the relationships that you have. There's just all these different points of data that in my opinion is nearly impossible to mimic that you can't really have like a robot that's like composing ideas. I think that it would be really good at, you know, taking inspiration from everything that's happened in the past and kind of trying to
Yep.
like hallucinate it and predict the future, but it's never going to be the same as like do you know who Rick Rubin is?
Yes, I've read. I've long some time back I read that book about creativity. I don't remember the title, but yeah, I know who is. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be an AI Rick Rubin anytime soon. Like that guy operates fully
Yep.
off vibes alone, and he is a singular human being in that respect, and that's why he is so revered by so many creatives. I have a very hard time thinking that an AI could even come close to mimicking anything like that. Um, and so
I
no,
agree. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. I said I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Spot
yeah.
on.
And and regardless of like what shape a potential rebellion or whatever revolution looks like, I mean, I could certainly envision a conflict happening. It's not in the realm of impossibility. I mean, anything could happen. And with the way that the infrastructure is moving, like towards drone-based warfare, it really only makes sense that it leaves us open for a vulnerability where a lot of these systems can get hijacked, especially as the weapons and technology just becomes more and more formidable. I mean, I don't know if it's Palantir or which company it is, but like they announced like this new warehouse that they're building somewhere out in the Midwest, and it looks like an evil base from like a fucking superhero comic. And I was just like, okay, you know, like that's great that you guys have all this pride in the weaponry you're making, but this is man, I can't imagine what kind of stuff they're cooking up in those in those back
Might have been
rooms.
Andural. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yes, Endural. Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. It was definitely Endural. Um, so yeah, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen on the battlefront? But as you said, yeah, a lot of job losses. I'm hearing a lot of that as well. A lot of concerns regarding that. But at the same time, like you said, with healthcare, this is yet again AI is just going to be another leverage point. You know, the like you said about the farmers, this is just yet another tool that we can use in our tool belt. And ultimately, I mean, look, I even with all those lost jobs, there's going to be so much more innovation that's happening that every just about every person, as long as they can afford an AI subscription, is going to have access to. And yeah, a lot of people are not going to be able to adapt, especially the boomer generation. Sure, but I mean, with every economic shift, there's always somebody that gets left behind. You know, at one point, when New York and America started to switch from horse-drawn carriages to cars, the horse industry took a huge turn to the point where horses were just dying in the street, and they had to like get all these services to remove the bodies because they just didn't need them anymore.
Yeah, and we need to have empathy for the previous generation that is struggling to adapt, because someday probably we are going to face that. When we get
Mm-hmm.
older, I'm sure there'll be some crazy technological advancements that no matter how hard we try and no matter how tech savvy we are, I'm sure we'll have a lot of trouble adjusting to. I mean, in the future. So yeah, we have to balance those things and be empathetic. Like, yeah, we understand why you're venting out. We understand why you think like these teenagers and people are crazy on social media and phone every time. Well, that's the new world, unfortunately or fortunately.
Yeah, yeah, just got to take it as it comes. Um, and I wanted to finish off with this. In respect to your experience working in the cybersecurity world, um, regarding some of I don't know maybe the attacks that you've seen or just trends that you've noticed, what is what are some of the things that you're most concerned about moving forward into the future?
Well, since I work mostly with organizations, I think see, regulatory bodies are amping up the regulations, but unless and until you build a culture around security, you will not have that level of a company that has a culture of security versus a company that's just following the security practices because um, their government requires them or the regulatory body requires them to. There's a huge difference between that. That's one. The second thing is strategic investments. Now each company has a limited budget, right? There's only so much money they can spend on security. I know these companies like Meta, they have like we've already they have budgets for security larger than the defense budgets of certain countries. I mean, even then it's still limited, right? You have only a certain amount that you can spend. So so I encourage that any company that's looking at investing in cybersecurity, they be very, very strategic. They do their research. They make sure they hire the right people. They make sure they speak to a lot of people and look at a lot of things before they put any money anywhere. Because what happens is in larger organizations or at least medium-sized to larger organizations, once you make an investment and if you don't see the ROI, the next time you go to the board or to go to whoever is in charge to get your budget approved, they're going to look at your past investments. So be very, very strategic in terms of where you invest because it's only going to go upwards. Like as technology advances, the attacks are getting more sophisticated. We are already seeing that it's getting more and more complex to manage these large infrastructures that you have. So make sure you are very strategic about your investments. Make sure you build a culture of security. And for individuals, I would suggest sit down, read a bunch of books, talk to a bunch of people, and figure out what kind of digital presence you want to have. Do you want to have a bunch of, or maybe a single anon account and a personal account, and you want to keep your personal information hidden and only transact through anon accounts? Then learn how anonymity works, learn how to protect yourself, like hide your identity. Or if you decide to go the other route where you want to use your face and your name, and that's how you want to build your brand or personal brand, or maybe you want to just make sure you're using your real identity, then in that case learn how to protect your personal data, your where you should put what kind of email address, what kind of passwords you should use, what are the latest technologies, like maybe using those UB keys, like they are like physical USB kind of keys you can use to store your MFA. So there is a lot of things you can do. Decide what you want to do and then learn the best security practices and implement them and do that today, because everybody thinks like, hey, I'm just a regular dude. Why would anybody want to target me? But like we already covered, most businesses and people who think that way, it doesn't work because you are not being targeted. You just happen to have been a part of a data leak, like your email address and password was just happened to be the part of that data leak, and the hacker picked that up and ran a script to try and log in, and you just got compromised. Right? It's not like people were looking to target you because you were a target. So even if you think you're not a target, take your security seriously. It doesn't take a lot of effort. It only takes some effort when you are setting it up and putting it in place. After
Hmm.
that, after a while, you get used to it, and it's just changing your password and making sure you get alerted if your data gets leaked. It's basic stuff, and once you learn about it, it becomes second nature to you. So those are the main things I would say. And to youngsters who are getting into cybersecurity, it's a good field. It's fun to work. It gets challenging sometimes. Be consistent. Network with people. Speak to a lot of people. Learn about different fields. Keep an open mind and just keep learning. I mean, it's a field that has some job security. In with the changing AI, cybersecurity is where human intervention will remain necessary for a long time. Like before the other, like it'll be the last job to go. Cybersecurity will be one of the last jobs to go if AI becomes very, very, very mainstream.
Hmm.
So yeah, those are the things. Anything you would like to add?
Uh, there is one thing. I don't know if you've heard of this book called "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends."
Yep, Nicole Polrodot. I read it.
Oh, okay,
Fun book.
perfect. Yeah, I was just gonna recommend it. I'd heard it on a Joe Rogan podcast when he had her on to talk about it. It was one of the few interviews that really put the whole thing into perspective. Because from what I remember, she talked about it on like cybersecurity on a geopolitical scale and what that
Yep.
looked like. But even just on the personal that you mentioned there, it is of the utmost importance. The world is going to continue being digital unless somehow we get like a major solar flare or an EMP that affects every single piece of tech and wipes every single hard drive. This
Yeah,
world isn't going anywhere. So uh, having proper cognitive security, CogSec, or just understanding how to put certain partitions up between you and the digital world, it's the same thing as locking your car at night. It's the absolute exact
yeah,
same thing as locking your front door and making sure, if you're, walking home alone at night, that you're, looking around the shoulder or whatever. Like, it's just
yeah.
understanding
True.
your environment and being diligent.
Yep, definitely. On talking of book recommendations, I'll just throw one out. It's called Pegasus. Now, both of these, the one that you showed just now, this is how they tell me the world ends, and Pegasus, both are written by people who are a little bit left leaning. So I would suggest that if someone has strong political opinions biased towards the right, just keep an open mind. Both of these are good books. I've had people come to me like, "Hey, this was written by leftists." I was like, "So what? It's just a book. Read it for what it's there for." Right. This is a good book. It talks about the Pegasus spyware from the NSO group in Israel, who are probably like one of the top spyware companies, like surveillance tech companies in the world. It's a fun read if you want to learn how a massive geopolitical operation is done in terms of Pegasus, like a spyware, how how or governments buy it, how they use it to spy on people, spy on opposition, spy on terrorists, all kinds of people. Basically, it's a fun read. I've read it. I recommend it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar with Pegasus. I am still every time I hear about the story, it reminds me like, oh yeah, no, my phone can be compromised because now apparently the second iteration of Pegasus, and for those who don't know, it's a name of software that Mossad linked cybersecurity agency made to, I believe it was to infiltrate the Iran nuclear program, or no,
No, that
uh,
was Stuxnet.
that was
Um,
Stuxnet. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
this
separate.
this this was built by NSO Group, and it was sold. Like you can, like
Yes,
governments could
yes.
buy it. Yep,
Yeah, and Saudi Arabia bought access to it so that they could get into the emails of, I believe it was Jamal Khashoggi, who
yep,
was the journalist for the Washington Post, where they used, they somehow got a hold of Jeff Bezos' cell phone number, sent him a text message, which
yeah.
with the new
Zero click,
version,
by the way.
yeah,
Yeah.
with the new version, you don't even have to open the text message. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess he had opened it, and so that gave him full access to the phone. Which obviously, him being the owner of the Washington Post, there's correspondences and whatever other emails and information they got, which is why his news were leaked, um, and all that stuff happened. And then they orchestrated the murder of a journalist who was an ocean away, and managed to get him into the Turkish embassy, I believe it was. Which, yeah, it's nuts. Now they don't like you said. It's zero click. You don't even have to open the text. They could just, yep, there you go, root access of your phone.
Yeah, the book and the papers came out like quite some time ago. So you probably there's probably much more advanced versions of these kinds of spyware now.
Oh yeah, and I know that we completely glossed over Stuxnet, but for those who don't know, this is spyware that I believe was made by the NSA to infiltrate Iran's nuclear development program. And the reason that the world got a hold of it, or at least it became infamous, is because it was made um, it was made to spread to as many computers as possible, and
Yeah.
somehow escaped containment from the Iranian nuclear, well, whatever computers they had in their facilities there. And then eventually researchers got a hold of it, and they're like, "Oh, wait a minute, what the fuck is this?"
Yep.
Which is nuts. Yeah. Um,
Yep.
in any case, yeah. Thank you for taking the time to speak today. I really appreciated your insight. I'm so lucky to have people like you that agree to come on, because I've never talked to anyone in cybersecurity. I've never understood the full scope of it. And it was really informative to get that insight in terms of like what it's like to see that from your own perspective in India.
Oh, definitely, man. And thanks a lot. I love the content that you post, and it's fun. This is the first time I'm probably ever talking to someone over the internet, like publicly, and to actually have an interview. It's fun, and I consume a lot of your content. I'm glad to be part of communities where there's positive, like-minded people. So that's definitely fun. And I'm just a beginner. I would definitely say that there's a lot of people out there who are much more knowledgeable than me, and I'd definitely love to introduce you to a few of them. You'd love to have them on your show, I'm sure. And I look forward to the other interviews that you're having. Um, I'm looking forward to everything that you post, and I hope you get your account back soon.
Yeah, I hope so too. And yeah, thank you for the kind words. Yeah, if you got people, by all means, send them my way. I'm always interested to talk as many interesting people as possible. But yeah, man, it's been great. I don't know when I'll be on next, but I'll keep all the updates in Discord, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, thanks again for taking the time, and that'll be the end for today.
Thanks a lot, man.